Can I just say something about Andrea?
Welcome back, everybody. Day six. Day six was a little bit of a change of pace. We are definitely starting to approach the end game now, and it is starting to show in a lot of different ways how things are coming together. It continues to be a real battle of attrition against Alice. She's taking a lot of blows over the last couple of weeks, and not really, offering an awful lot in return. And so today was really no exception. We started off with a little bit more of the Court Connect chaos. Because Lynn Blank was having a terrible hard time getting connected. She was the first witness that they expected to call for the day. And there were apparently all kinds of problems with Court Connect today. The court was having problems as well. They had gotten a notification that things were running very slowly and people were getting timed out and stuff. And so what was happening was that Lynn would have trouble logging in, and then she would get logged in, but she would be muted, but then she would be unmuted, but her camera would switch to the back facing camera instead of the front facing camera. The court wants the face visible while they testify. So there was just a lot of back and forth trying to get that dealt with. It took about 40 minutes, and so it was almost 9:15 when we finally got started with the session for today. But that was kind of okay because it gives me an opportunity to observe and pay attention to what's going on. And I had noticed in the hall that Alice was today wearing very similar black skirt to what she had worn yesterday. I noticed. I'm like, checking the hemline and things like that. Oh, it's the same kind of thing that we've been seeing. But she had paired it with this blue corduroy blazer, with like big brass buttons and stuff like that. So it was just an outfit. But it was when we went into the courtroom and she took the jacket off, and we have all these delays and things like that, and I'm just, people are starting to move around and do stuff, and that's when I noticed she was wearing the same dress as yesterday. She's wearing the same dress. She lost the big wrist piece, the big wrist bracelet. She did still have the jingle on, but the big wrist one vanished. But guys, she was in the same dress. Now, I'm not at all opposed to recycling clothing or anything like that. I mean, for heaven's sakes, of course not. And I mean, I traveled down here, I didn't bring like a gazillion suitcases or anything like that. I'm probably going to be recycling some of the clothes that I wear at some point. But it's just not, there's just something kind of ick about wearing the same dress 2 days in a row, because it does lead one to wonder, did you sleep in that? Did you like drop it on the floor and then pick it up the next day and think, that's exactly the thing that I need today? I don't know. I don't know. But it was certainly very noticeable because it's a very distinctive dress, and the way that it fits and things like that. Wasn't really expecting that, so the delay gave me the opportunity to notice. Think you might have like slept in that dress and then come back to court the next day. It didn't help by the fact that she was yawning a lot over the course of the court day today, which is new. That has not happened before. So it really does kind of add to the impression of, wow, you had a rough night and you slept in your dress and then got up and came to court the next day. Not a great look, but we did finally get Lynn on for her testimony. So she explained she'd never testified before. The judge gave her the same introduction to testifying by Court Connect that he had given to the previous witness. And so it started off, Peter Langois did the questioning of Lynn. And so started off with kind of the preliminaries, introductions. How did you become acquainted with Ioan and Alice? She explained she had been a fan of Ioan. And then in 2016, with Alice's help, they became the official Ioan Griffith fan club over on Facebook. They were his official fan page. And since then, they tried to support him, but she explains there were some glitches in the road, but they are back to supporting him now. So her testimony is gonna be about these glitches in the road. She describes Alice as a very good friend at the time. She had the way that they got acquainted with Alice was that they had sent the Griffith family some presents, and Alice replied to their email. And so they communicated over email at first, and it developed into a friendship. And she said she would like to think that they were very good friends at one point. She said they had a fan club for Alice as well, and a group on Facebook to help her sell her purses and jewelry when she was making those. That was an era, a crafty era. As the fan club leader for Alice, they would organize Twitter events, and they would ask people to promote her by posting pictures and, posting like, hope you're having a great day, things like that. They would have giveaways of copies of her movies that she was in. She noted that the Christmas card was particularly popular, very popular, as well as signed photographs that Alice would provide to them. But she took the fan club down in 2022. She deleted it from Facebook because they had a falling out. And Lynn realized that the things that Alice had said about Ioan were not true. And she felt very badly that she was one of the people that had been tweeting about him and Bianca. She felt hurt and misled by following Alice's suggestions, but because they were friends, she believed that all this bad stuff about Ioan that Alice was telling her that wasn't true. Over the course of this part of her testimony, there are multiple objections coming in from Janina. It's vague as to timing, it's misstating the evidence, things like that. All of these objections are being overruled. So she first testifies that she was made aware that Ioan and Alice were breaking up in July of 2020. And this was when Alice sent an email to Lynn's best friend, who is Deb Survey, the other administrator of the fan club. And in that email, she said that they might be headed for divorce. So we start looking through some emails, and the first emails that we are looking at were submitted with her declaration. She filed a declaration supporting Ioan's application to extend the DVRO back last year. So the first of these emails, they're attached to her declaration. So we have seen those. The first one was, well, the first thing we do is we just get her declaration into evidence. We review some of the things that she said in her declaration. She acknowledged writing it around May of last year. There was a typo in it that she wanted to correct. It had said that she remained friends with Alice until 2023. She wanted to correct that to 2022. And so that was when she said she ended the friendship. Other than that, she says everything else is true and correct. And her declaration was admitted. No objection from Janina. So we started with Alice telling her on numerous occasions that Alice, knew how to ruin Ioan's career. And by that, Lynn understood that she was saying she could do things that would make him look bad in public. She could put an article out on the Daily Mail, and she wanted them to talk about him using sex workers and cocaine. So the plot begins, the smear campaign, the conspiring, the getting the assistance from the accomplices to help her with this undertaking. Another portion of her declaration, Alice said she had purposefully bounced 20 checks to the water company, and she did it because that would ruin Ioan's credit. So now we have a blatant admission to financial abuse, doing actions for the specific purpose of causing him economic harm, hurting his credit. Now we turn to the emails. So the first one is an email that is from July of 2020, July 14th of 2020. And so this is the one that I think she was referring to in her declaration. It's got several parts. The first part is from Deb, and then there is parts of it that are from Alice, and there's kind of a conversation back and forth. So the parts that are Alice's statements are admitted into evidence. And Peter focused on what he would do is he would introduce these emails, and then he would just like focus on a certain part of it. But there's often quite a lot more to this email. In this particular one, he focused on her saying, "I'm at the end of my rope. I feel like throwing in the towel." And Lynn understood that as Alice saying that she was frustrated and she was thinking about walking away from them. She was thinking about walking away from Ioan, and she said them. So I'm like, do you mean the girls too? Was she gonna walk away from the girls? Is this whole thing like a big old projection? At this point, it wouldn't surprise me at all. Then we turn to some tweets that were posted by Alice. We have a whole series, again, a whole series of objections that Janina is making. These are vague, questions are leading, et cetera, et cetera. These are, again, all being overruled. So we start to look at these tweets. They come into evidence. There is an article as well that came in, but Lynn said she doesn't believe she read the article because she doesn't get this paper. It's a headline from the Daily Mail. So I went through the declaration to look at what these were, and what it was is that they had this. I can see like how this is laid out in the case. So Alice had told them, "I want you guys, according to Lynn in her declaration, I want you guys to talk about him using sex workers and cocaine." Then Alice posts online on Twitter, these accusations about Ioan using cocaine and things like that. And this is then picked up in different places. It's picked up by the Daily Mail, it's picked up by the Sun, and so those are the articles that are submitted in this evidence. But Lynn is saying she didn't read it. She doesn't get the paper. It was just a headline. We then turn to an email that she received from Alice in November of 2021, where Alice is saying, "They're mad as hell today because I dropped the cocaine thing and it got written up in the Sun." And she understood the they to be Ioan and Bianca. They're mad. So this is like the gloating over her plan achieving its intended aim. They smeared him on Twitter. It was picked up in the tabloids. It was published. She got a reaction from Ioan and Bianca, at least in her mind, if nothing else, because I don't think we ever saw anything public on that. Maybe there were like lawyer conversations or something. I have no idea, but whatever. They're mad. She got her reaction. So she's very pleased with what she was able to accomplish. This is objected to on the grounds of she lacks personal knowledge. That's overruled. So it's becoming very clear that the judge is quite interested in hearing what Lynn has to say. He is not really crediting these objections at all. Another email from Alice to Deb and Lynn that was received about October 27th of 2021. We already know this to be the day of the great Instagram reveal, right? The phone call that Ioan received with just the words Bianca Wallace. And so they kind of panicked and posted their Instagram announcement of their relationship because they didn't know what she was going to do. And they wanted to have some measure of control over that being publicized. So in this email, Lynn describes it as Alice was frustrated because Ioan wasn't calling her. He wasn't spending time talking to her. She was surprised when Alice said that Ioan had panic attacks in this email because he looks very calm and confident. There's a lot of stuff about Bianca in this email that she thought that they were together in Australia. And the quote that Peter elicits, "These two people have ruined my life. I want her chastised online." And Lynn knew that she meant Bianca by she. She wants Bianca chastised online. So this is, a call to action. I want this. I want you to do these things online. I want you to make her online life miserable. I want you to make her unhappy. I want her to be, treated like she has a scarlet letter out there in the public square of Twitter. Another email. This one was sent on January 5th of 2022. This one, she says, Lynn says she couldn't believe it because Alice gave them his address, and she said she would never ask for it. It's his business. She doesn't even want to know it. But she said that Alice wanted us to encourage people to send him a bag of dog excrement. Dog shit. She wanted them to send him dog shit. She did not, in fact, send the bag as requested, nor did she give out Ioan's address to anybody. Another email received January the 7th of 2022. And the quote that is called out in this one is from Alice. "However, it's fine for other people to, quote, hear rumors, unquote." It's fine for them to hear rumors. So now she's encouraging them to spread, gossip, spread information, spread gossip, perhaps to, maybe make it up herself, make things up, or just, spread things that they hear from different sources, particularly if they're not favorable. She understood that she meant that people were maybe tweeting about them. And there's another reference. "So as I told Tone," and she understands that Tone is her brother. Obviously, don't give all of the details, but I'm very happy for people to say he's throwing us out of the house. She understood this to mean that Alice wanted Ioan to be the bad guy, and they wanted this whole thing to be presented as if he was being very mean about the situation. And Lynn says she believes she did tweet that a few times, and she did believe he was the bad guy then. But she does not now. She was asked, do you believe that now? Janina objected to this on relevance grounds. That's overruled. She does not now believe that Ioan is the bad guy. So we're seeing kind of how this little system works, right? We're seeing how this little system works. She expresses what she wants. She makes it clear, hint, hint, wink, wink. Always got to have that little bit of deniability. Right? That little bit of deniability. Well, I didn't say his name. I didn't say to make things up. I didn't say, no, but you said, you're happy for people to say he's throwing you and the children out of the house. You're happy for that story to be out. It's quite clear that you're saying you want them to be posting that message out in public and spreading it publicly. So that's the manipulation at play. We then move to some new emails. These are ones we haven't seen. There's a whole new exhibit, a whole new set of emails that were not attached to her declaration. And so several of these come into evidence, and we follow kind of the same pattern of introducing it, calling out a certain language from it. But I am very curious to see the emails in their entirety once they finally become available to the public. Because if they follow the pattern of these previous emails, it's like this quoted stuff is just a drop in the bucket. Like there's a lot more going on in these messages than just the specific things that Peter is calling out as what he considers most significant. So we start with some emails sent by Alice on November 5th of 2021. In this one, first one, it looks like Alice is referring to potential mediation. And she says, I can't live on that. So I think you should take me to court and we can do all this in the public eye. She's relating, you know, kind of like her conversation with Ioan. Lynn said that she would make some statements like this that she didn't really understand because they're not in the show business. But what she did understand from this email was that Alice wanted quite a lot of money from him and that she would make him look really bad unless he gave her what she wanted. So we are starting now to turn to litigation abuse. Her willingness to use the court to try to get what she wants, to use the court as a weapon, and the threat of the publicity that comes with court as a weapon, as a way to coerce him to get her way. Email sent on November 18th of 2021. This one, the quote is, other points, she doesn't have a green card. And understood she to be Bianca. She doesn't have a green card. Continuing the quote, so she has 90 days only and can't work. So she has to marry Ioan, and that's another reason to drag the divorce out as long as possible so that they can't get married and she can't get her green card. That's litigation abuse. That is not a proper use of the courts or the court processes. And Lynn understood this to mean she wanted to get Bianca deported. An email that was sent to Deb and her from Alice on January 11th of 2022. First, we go into the context for this one. She says there's a few parts of the context. First, she was making fun of Bianca wanting to stay in Hollywood and be a star, and that Ioan is just doing what she wants, you know, trying to placate her. There's stuff in it about the house and about Ioan and her financial issues, and you know, she just wanted a lot of money from him. So we get into the content. Actually, I think that was like how she just explained that particular email or set of emails. We get to another one. It's the same day. We have an objection to this email first because Janina is saying, I can't tell if it's complete. It looks like it's cut off at the bottom. And Peter is saying it's her own email. If she thinks it's incomplete, she has the ability to put more of it in. She can complete it. Janina keeps complaining, well, but we need to know if there's more after this or not, so it's not taken out of context. And the judge says, well, I'm overruling the objection. I will give it the weight that, you know, it warrants. And to him, it appears to be complete. There's a final word, glorious. Nothing after that. So he thinks that is the end of the email, and he's happy to admit it. So it does come in. We turn to the bottom paragraph, and there's something about a 6 weeks thing. She says she thinks it was something that somebody came up with that was some kind of immigration thing about Bianca. She's not really sure what it is. But this comes up again in the next message, which is on January the 12th. So the judge does not admit part of this email because it becomes incomplete, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't seem to be the material part that they want to get into. And so in this one, the quote is, they only have just under 6 weeks to get married. If I don't agree to bifurcate, he's going to move to Australia and live on the house proceeds. I just have to sit tight and they'll be fucked. Yeah, just not agree to bifurcate, so they can't get married. This is the 6 weeks thing. I don't know why, where, or how, or why they got the idea. that they had under 6 weeks to get married. Maybe she just thought, you know, they're like desperately trying to calculate when was Bianca's date of entry into the country, and so how long is she allowed to be here, and it would only be 6 weeks, and so forth. Which is like totally not how immigration by marriage works at all. It's not how it works. But and the reality in all of this anyway is the irony is, you know, they didn't know jack shit about Bianca's immigration status, because as it turned out, Bianca has since disclosed that she got her own independent green card status to the United States, and it was based on her having been a victim of domestic violence of her ex-husband back in Australia. She was relocated because on the advice of law enforcement in Australia, because of the danger to her from that situation. So she did not need to marry Ioan to get status to come into the country, but you know, this is typical kind of Alice thinking she knows everything and can figure everything out. She really does think she's the smartest one in the room, and you know, as it turns out, all kinds of stuff she's not aware of. So Lynn says she had never heard of the 6 weeks thing, but Alice was very, very happy that they only had this idea that they only had 6 weeks. And the quote continues, so it's a case of white knuckling it for just over 5 weeks. And this is again about them getting married, and she's thinking, I'm not going to divorce him so that he can get married to Bianca, and then it'll fall apart. Litigation abuse, using the process to inflict collateral damage to try to affect his relationships, not because of the merits of your claims or anything like that. An email from Alice to Deb on February 23rd of 2022. There's a couple of them. The top one is the one that we're interested in and that gets admitted. The statement there is, however, I could plan something with the newspaper for the post-hunt period. Lynn says she understood this to mean that Alice could go to the Daily Mail with an article about Bianca. She's not sure exactly what the post-hunt period means, but this was about Alice being able to take an article to the Daily Mail about Bianca. So now she is starting to flaunt her connections, her ability to use publicity, just as she had threatened, to be able to damage Ioan, damage Bianca in public. An email from Alice to Lynn and Deb, dated February 26th of 2022. In the middle of this page, there is a statement about starting discovery with the lawyers, and Alice is stating that she will request, her request for Ioan is all of his phone calls, messages, and everything. And I may choose not to share it if we don't go to court. Now she is repeating her blackmail, the blackmail types of claims that we saw in the, you know, messages that she would send him in support of the original DVRO application. Give me what I want. We won't go to court, and I won't out all of your private messages that I am going to abuse the discovery process to get a hold of, not for a proper purpose, but so I can use them to blackmail you. That's what this email says. And he can worry forever about if I'm going to keep them private or release them. But I want to write a book. I want to write a book, Alice says. Lynn says that Alice talked a lot about her book. She wanted to write a book about her whole divorce, about Ioan running off with Bianca and leaving her and the girls destitute. Oh, it sounds like a real tearjerker. Oh, it sounds like a Nicholas Sparks kind of book. I bet it would be a bestseller. She would ask Lynn and Deb for suggestions for titles for her books, because that's how creative Alice is. She needs help coming up with a title for her book that she's going to write using the proceeds, so to speak, of her litigation abuse. That's her plan that she's put in writing here and is now biting her in the ass by showing up in court. An email to Lynn and Deb from Alice dated March 3rd of 2022. This one, Janina again objects. It appears to be cut off. It doesn't continue. Oh, but wait, I see it. And the judge is like, yeah, this one is complete. So this one again also comes in. The statement here, anyway, I hear there may be an article in the Daily Mail on Saturday. Cross fingers. Lynn understood by that they knew she was telling whoever she knew there at the Daily Mail her story and was waiting for them to publish it. So just more confirmation of her connections with the Daily Mail, her cozy relationship, her ability to plant information there that suited her. We then have a Daily Mail article. Lynn again did not, she says she didn't see this when it was published because they don't get this paper here. So this doesn't come into evidence, but she nevertheless gets a fairly long description of it in, because when she's first asked what it is, she says, oh, Alice would tell us this stuff all the time about like the kids losing their forever home. So this is one of the articles that relates to, you know, the smear about, you know, him kicking them out of the family house. When the problem is Alice wants to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to litigate this divorce, and they need to have a way to pay the lawyers for that, Alice. That's what you wanted. Then the last one is a message that she received from Alice around March 14th or 15th of 2024. So this is after she has said that she ended their relationship. She figured out Alice was lying and so forth. In this one, Alice was mad at her because she had posted in the Ioan group that she would not post pictures of the girls anymore. And Alice she was saying things like, you don't even have pictures of the girls. And Lynn is like, she had sent me pictures of the girls all the time and stuff. This one, it does not. This one is incomplete. According to Janina, it references a screenshot attached, and the screenshot is not part of the exhibit. So the judge sustains it. It's not complete, but Lynn gets to testify about it anyway. And so she says that she was just upset because now they were going to support Ioan. And because Lynn had deleted Alice's Facebook group. And when asked about like her communications with Alice and their friendship and so forth, she's asked, is this, you know, how did this take place? Phone calls, emails, texts, and stuff like that. She says some of it would be over phone calls, and they would talk about her kids and how she felt she was too old to raise them. Felt she was too old to raise the kids is what she is telling her close friends. That was it. That was it for Lynn. That was quite a slew of not particularly favorable admissions there from Alice in her own writing to her own people. We come back for cross-exam after our little morning recess. Janina says, you testified about being the administrator of the Ioan Griffith fan club on Facebook and how you tried to support him, but there were some glitches in the road. And she acknowledges that the we she had referred to was her and Deb. They were both co-administrators of the fan club. Starting with the email that Alice sent on July 14th of 2020, where she said she believed that Alice wanted to divorce Ioan. So Janina says, I have an impeachment exhibit, and there's this whole process. It's the same thing that we used yesterday, where she's got her assistant on Court Connect. The assistant will email the impeachment exhibit to Joe's office. Joe's office will then email the impeachment exhibit to the witness. So there's like you know, fairly significant delay in getting all these things, you know, coordinated. But we get the impeachment text, and it's a whole email thread. It starts, the top has July 15th of 2020, but it's 2 pages. And so she says, after receiving the July 14th email, you emailed her the next day to check in. And Lynn says yes, because that's what friends do. Alice, in this follow-up email, says she thought that they were going to be okay. She thought they were going to be okay, right? And Lynn says, well, it's there in the email, yes. That's what she said. And Janina elicits, in fact, Alice tells you, I think he has been stressed out to the max and ended up expressing his anger at me. I don't think he means it. I hope he doesn't. Lynn's like, that's the message. She's Lynn, I found her to be very credible in many ways, because she did acknowledge, you know, she didn't like fight stuff like this. She's like, yeah, it's in the email. There were like a couple points, as you'll see, that we get to where she gets corrected on things, and she just acknowledges it. She doesn't like try to make excuses or make a big deal out of it or anything like that. But she also has, she's got a couple of good skills. One is she has this way of answering questions that's like, so what? They'll, you know, because Janina is always with the, isn't it true? You know, and so it's always a yes or no answer. And Lynn would just answer, yes. Just like a ... and question mark, like implicit at the end of her answer. Yes. So that was one thing that she did that I thought it was just kind of funny. It was it's clearly these are natural things that she does. As she said, she never testified before. Took her 40 minutes to get on Court Connect, so I don't think she was, you know, especially prepped or anything like that. They're showing her exhibits that she's like, yeah, I've never read this thing, so I don't think she was particularly well prepped as a witness in this sense. But she just had some natural skills. It reminds me of when Isaac Baruch was on the stand, and he had those absolutely natural skills as a witness. He just handed Elaine's ass to her in Debt Be Heard. And so Lynn has some similar skills, and the big one is that she's not easily led. She gets a question that might be a yes or no answer, and she knows how to just answer it the way that she wants to. She's not going to let the words be put in her mouth. And that's a really difficult witness to deal with as a lawyer, because you can't control them. And it means that all of your questions can become a little bit dangerous. You don't know what you're going to elicit. The best police officers, like the most experienced ones, the smartest ones, they learn how to do this, where they don't answer your question as you've asked it. They just listen to like the gist of what you're going for, and then they answer it the way that they want to. So it helps them avoid a lot of traps, and it helps them kind of reframe cross-examination into just another opportunity to testify. And instead of having words put in your mouth, they're just taking the opportunity to get their story out yet another time. So Lynn had this skill, and it really shined in a couple of key moments. But this was like the yes. So had to call that one out. She acknowledged that yes, she corrected her declaration about the friendship continuing through 2022. And there's another line where she said she was in regular direct contact with Alice from 2016 through March of 2024. And Lynn's response to this is, oh, well, I guess I should have read it better, because it should also say 2022. I think my suspicion, just from having heard the testimony so far, is the reason why this was originally, characterizes March 2024 is because that's when they had the last communication, the one she was just referring to that didn't get into evidence, where Alice was pissed at her for taking Ioan's side and taking Alice's fan club down and so forth. So I think that's why the March 2024 was originally written down. But in terms of like specifically what they're dealing with, the regular communication she is saying really ended in 2022. So she corrects that as well. Doesn't make a particularly big deal about it or fight it or anything like that. Just like, yeah, I guess I should have read that better. When Alice and Ioan first separated, she agrees she was very supportive of Alice and they had a close friendship. And when Ioan first publicly announced his relationship with Bianca, she was also very supportive of Alice at that time. Alice was devastated, and she could tell by the way that she acted. She agrees that she expressed deep sadness upon occasions. This is where we're getting the yes. Because by now you could just tell Lynn thinks this is all fake. She thinks this is just, you can't take Alice's word for anything. And so, yeah, Alice said that. And isn't it true? She expressed deep sadness upon occasions. Yes. Janina wants to confirm that the date of the public announcement of the relationship on Instagram was October 27th, 2021. Lynn's like, I don't know it off the top of my head. I'd have to look at it. So we go through the whole wait to get the exhibit process of sending her the Instagram post. And she agrees that refreshed her recollection as to the date. And so the email that they had discussed previously from that same day, Janina wants to know, isn't it true? This email was part of a larger thread initiated by you. You started this after Ioan announced the public relationship. And Lynn says, I don't remember. So now Janina presents her with the 7-page document, which is the entire email thread. The judge admits all of it except the parts where Deb is involved in the conversation. Deb's comments are not admitted because she is not here in court. She is no longer with us. She is not testifying. And so her statements are hearsay under this interpretation that they're using in this court, where like everything is hearsay regardless of the purpose for which it's being offered. Once again, I don't think this is probably being offered for the truth of the matter asserted, but nevertheless, that's the rule they're using. So we start at the end of this email and we just kind of work back. We spend this long time working back. Okay, this one, so it turns out actually the very beginning one was from Deb. It was not from Lynn at all. It was from Deb. And it was to Alice and her. And then Alice responds. And then Deb responds again. And then Alice responds, and then she responds. Lynn, like, finally gets involved in this conversation. There's all this back and forth, and at one point, there's one point where Janina's, asking her, and you received this about, on or about October 27th of 2021, and she's like, well, I don't remember when I received it, and so then Janina was like, oh, well. Turn to this page and here's you responding to the email that you said you didn't remember receiving. It's like this super snotty, super snide, like that's obviously not what she said. Nobody thinks that that's what she said. I don't know what you think you're accomplishing. See, this is the problem with this type of cross-examination and this limited skill set. Janina is not incompetent by any stretch of the imagination, but she's very much a one-trick pony. She doesn't have a lot of gears to work with. And so when you're stuck in this, isn't it true? And this just kind of snide attitude where you treat everybody on cross-examination as if they're public enemy number one, it doesn't make you look good, because nobody thinks everybody in the courtroom except your client is public enemy number one. with the obvious exception of your client. Obviously, your client thinks that, but that's not persuasive to anybody else. And so when your case depends on, you must think the entire world is assholes except for my client, it's not a very strong case. So you really don't have to have all this attitude to be able to make the points that you're making. The facts are what are supposed to make your case. If you don't have the facts, you've got a much bigger problem. You really shouldn't be in trial in the first place. And so that's all your cross-examination is there to do, just to bring out the facts. You're not there to argue with the witness about it or to, particularly in a bench trial. People will do all kinds of tricks in a jury trial because, they just make it more dramatic. And sometimes people like that kind of thing and stuff. But judges rarely do. Judges rarely like these little jabs and things like that. So Lynn, it just explains, well, as I said, I don't remember getting this email. It's the dates that are the issue because it's been quite a few years at this point. So all we just established is, yes, this is part of a whole email chain. Janina wants the whole thing in the evidence. Deb's emails are excluded, but the ones from Alice and Lynn are allowed in. And so we characterize this email as Alice initially expressing her sadness about the Instagram post. And Lynn says, I'm so very sorry, Al. It's a punch in the face to you and the ease he's done this. I just can't fathom how sneaky he is. And Alice says, EM, the youngest child, is a mess. I can hardly breathe. Why is your, how old is she at this point? 9? What's she doing on Instagram? Why are you sharing the adult business with her? She always thinks this makes Ioan look bad. It makes her look like a parent that does not safeguard her children, that does not protect them from adult things they have no business seeing or knowing or participating in. But Alice then says, I gave him so much love, so much love. Yeah, like you did when he proposed to you, like that much love. Have you guys seen that? There's this interview that Ioan gave where he describes the engagement, and it's like horrifying. It's like uncomfortable listening to this because Alice is abusing him while he is trying to propose marriage to her. It's like, it's just insane. And she gave him so much love. Oh, I knew, you responded. That was true. And Lynn agrees, Janina says, and you this isn't it true? This email thread is friends supporting a friend through a very difficult time. And Lynn does the yes. Yeah, that's what I've been saying. I thought this was my friend. I believed what she was telling me. I was trying to support her. Turns out it's all bullshit. But yeah, that's what we thought at the time. After the thread, there were additional continued threads that were supporting her, Alice, through her reaction to the Bianca announcement. And she says, yes. Here's now where she volunteers. She volunteers her answers. As I testified before, that I tweeted terrible things about Bianca. Some occasions, Alice asked me to do that. Other times, I did it independently because I felt bad for Alice until I read the restraining order application, the details, and it all came to light. I bet it did. I bet it did. Telling you guys, if there is one thing to read in the legal documents in this whole case, it's the original DVRO application and all the exhibits attached to it, because it's Alice in her own words, and it's who she is, and it's how she behaved, it's how she treated her husband, it's how she treated her husband's family, and it's just all there in her own words. Like, that's in so many ways, all you need to see. So that brought it all to light for Lynn at that point. Janina wisely thinks, I guess we probably ought to move on from this topic. So now we turn to whether she did research on Bianca. Lynn says, not really. Says, I didn't look her up or anything. I just repeated things that other people said, and they would pass information back and forth about Bianca. And it was an exchange between friends. But she acknowledged she encouraged Alice to go to the media at that time. Between November of 2021 and February, maybe December of 2022, I can't read my own writing on this one. I didn't quite catch the date, but some point in 2022, she says she did have phone calls with Alice. Janina asks, isn't it true? You only had one phone call with Alice. And Lynn says, no, actually, there were a few. Two of them, she was, well, I'm not going to go into that. Oh, I wanted you to go into it, Lynn. She was what? She was drunk. She was drunk. She was drunk, wasn't she? Wasn't that what you were going to say? Two of them, she was, well, I'm not going to go into that. We go to the regular contact she described in the declaration, and she agrees that was mostly via email, but there were some texts as well. So while there were phone calls, they were not apparently routine. In her testimony about the January 5th, 2022 email where she said Alice provided Ioan's address without her requesting it, and she said she would never request it. She wants to impeach the witness on this, and the judge says, well, please lay the foundation for this before we go marking exhibits and things like that. And so Janina asked, didn't you ask for Ioan's address so you could report Bianca for animal abuse? And Lynn says, I don't remember, but I might have. So she's asked if the email would refresh her recollection. She says that it probably would. The judge at this point wants an estimate of how much time do you have left, Janina? And she says about 15 to 20 minutes more. And so at this point, Detective Morales has arrived. He's been waiting. So the judge, they actually like brought him into the jury room and let him sit there. And so the judge says, go ahead and tell him to just come back at 1:30 after lunch. We are at this point, like, we're at like 11:30 something. So not going to get to Morales before lunch. So now we have marked an email dated January 5th of 2022 that's titled Twitter. That's the subject line, is Twitter. Just in case it wasn't clear what the obsession is. And so she reads the email. She acknowledges, yes, I did ask for it. And that Alice's previous email, the one about where she provided the address and said maybe send him a bag of shit, was in response to her own email. So it's, it's contradicting her testimony, but again, it doesn't, I didn't get the impression that it particularly affected her credibility because she just acknowledged it. She didn't fight it. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I did. I might have done that. And that was where I was at the time. She seems to be very open about what she had done before. Then the email on November 15th of 2021, where she's asked if this was in response to an email that she sent the same day. And she says, oh, it could be. Probably, yeah, probably. Asked if she recalled telling Alice negative things about Ioan, and she says, I have no doubt I probably did. That's where she was at right now. So by acknowledging all of this, she's preventing Janina from being able to get, whatever it is that she's trying to get that Lynn said back in the day into evidence, because Lynn isn't contradicting it. She's not denying it. So it's not a prior inconsistent statement. There's nothing for her to impeach. She's acknowledging, yeah, I probably did. Probably did. And I find the reason I find it so effective is, again, just helpful from a credibility standpoint to acknowledge, they're going to be able to prove it. This is kind of what you were doing then, just acknowledge it. But the way that she handles it like that has the effect to kind of minimize it. It's still along that same lines of the and. Like, yeah, she's been very forthcoming that this is what she was doing and where she was at. And also why, by the way, because Alice was feeding her a whole bunch of bullshit that she believed until she read the DVRO application. So there's like, these are duds in many ways from the impeachment standpoint, because she's like, yeah, that's exactly where we're at. I don't know what sort of hill you're trying to make out of this issue, but yeah, of course I probably did do that. She agrees again. Yeah, this is probably a friend venting to a friend. That is what a lot of these emails were around that time period, was talking a lot of shit. After Ioan's public, oh, here it gets fun, guys. This gets fun. After Ioan's public announcement about Bianca, the relationship, isn't it true you engaged with unknown third parties on social media? Yes, that is true. And isn't it true you stood up to someone named Alex who would defend Alice on social media? And Lynn says, is that Lupine? Lupine entered the trial, guys. Is that Lupine? And Janina says yes, and Lynn says, well, that's a character. Indeed. Lupine was quite a character. So isn't it true that Alice said she needed help because some people online were getting too invested in the divorce story? And Lynn says, well, I think around then is when Lupine was posting pictures of Ella with bruises. And he was just a very odd fellow. So again, with answering it her own way, not just calmly following the lead, yes or the no. I'm going to explain this how it was. This guy was a fucking weirdo, posting pictures of the kid. By the way, where did he get those pictures? Where was he getting pictures of Ella with bruises that Alice was then running around trying to pretend like she had nothing to do with this guy, had nothing to do with her, really? Because where did he get those pictures? So even like in her own crew, she can't like manage, who she's telling what. That really took me back to Amber Heard. And like all of her kind of different, her makeup person, and then the people that, lived in Johnny's penthouses, and then her mom and dad, and like she's got all these different stories spun up for all of them, and they don't always align, and like it's gotta be hard to keep track. Who did you tell what? And then like what if somebody talks to somebody and you get a different, they realize they've gotten a different account, stuff like that. That's the kind of thing she was managing. That's what came out to me from this testimony. So when she says that, Peter objects to this. He objects to this. I'm like, why? Why are you objecting? Let this in. The judge overrules it. Fortunately, this is in about Lupine being a weirdo, posting these pictures of Ella. Yeah, the judge wants to be able to consider that. So it is overruled. Asked if she sent Alex a DM, she said probably yes, but he blocked us. So at this point, the judge interjects and he says, we're getting into hearsay. And most of what I'm hearing this morning is just more of the same. It's more of the factual predicate. And so Janina, he's like, wants to move on. So Janina then asks, isn't it true that Alice asked you not to interact with Alex because the media thought she was pulling his strings. And the judge said, that's exactly the kind of hearsay I was just objecting to. So read the room, Janina. Nobody cares about this Lupine side story. Okay. And honestly, the more you open this door, the worse it's going to get, because this witness clearly has some things to say about this fucking weirdo. We close with, isn't it true Alice hasn't made bad comments to you about Ioan since November of 2022? And Lynn says, yeah, because I stopped talking to her. Yeah, because is the worst. It's the worst answer for the lawyer to hear on cross-examination. You don't want to hear yeah, because. Oh, shit. She was supposed to have to wait for redirect to do that. She's supposed to just answer yes or no. And it's very difficult. It's very difficult to manage this witness who just wants to say what they have to say. And it's a perfectly fair answer. Yeah, because lawyers develop ways of cutting the witness off when they start doing things like this, you know. But it's a challenge, you know, because then the other side can object. You're interrupting, let the witness finish her answer. Depends on the judge that you have. This can be very, very difficult to manage. But then in March of 2024, they exchanged emails. And at that point, she said nothing derogatory about Ioan or Bianca either in March 2024. And she agreed that was true. I'm like, yeah, because she's talking all kinds of shit to Lynn in this one. In this one, she's being derogatory to Lynn. She doesn't have to be derogatory to Ioan and Bianca in like every single thing. It certainly does not mean she stopped being derogatory. She's busy being derogatory to Lynn in this message. That's what she's preoccupied with right now. And the implication of it is because you're on Ioan's side. That certainly doesn't seem like, you know, that's some big change of heart or something like that. If that's what we're trying to present, the Alice has changed kind of narrative. I don't know that you suck because you're on Ioan's side is really supporting this whole I'm different now. It was just a temporary insanity thing, which has a little bit of a tendency to bleed over into, look what he made me do. He announced the relationship online. I just lost my mind. Look what he made me do. Quick redirect. She was aware that Ioan had left the house after sometime after New Year's of 2021. And that when he posted the announcement of his relationship with Bianca, that was 10 months later. That's right. It was 10 months later. Okay. Just imagine the genders reversed on this one. This was really a big part of the theme of the day for me. Is just imagine the genders reversed. Because boy, when we get to closing, am I going to have some things to say about that? But I really thought about this here because, you know, if it was a man who 10 months after his wife left him is announcing her relationship with her new boyfriend, and he's still obsessed, still fixated, still wanting to do this whole smear thing, the revenge and all that, we would be seriously concerned about their physical safety, wouldn't we? It would be a huge red flag for like, this guy seems kind of stalkery. And stalking is a huge risk factor when it comes to violence, when it comes to domestic violence in particular. This is a huge risk factor. But oh no, just a casual thing in this situation, because Because the genders are reversed. That's how I see it. She, again, agrees she did post some negative things about Ioan online, and she's asked why. Why did you do that? And she says, because I bought into the whole story Alice was telling us, only to find out a lot of it was false after reading the restraining order, and I wouldn't do it based if I had known then what I know now, I would not have done it. She's asked if friends venting is all that those communications were. Janina objects to that on as an improper opinion. That's sustained, and Peter concludes at that point. So Lynn is excused. We have our lunch break. It's cooled off quite a bit in LA. It's so much more pleasant. Oh my Lord, it's so much more tolerable. So I had a lovely lunch just sitting in the park next to the courthouse, listening to the birds, watching the people, feeling the cool breezes. Not a bad way to live. So we get back after lunch. First, Alice has a big scarf on when she comes back, but she's taking the scarf kind of off and on all afternoon. It really does seem like a security scarf. You know, it makes me wonder if like she sucks her thumb sometimes with her scarf. She takes it on, she takes it off. She's got her legal pad out now. She's messing with her legal pad. I can't help but see it's like half the page. There's like one half of a page that has writing on it. Not making extensive notes, but she's, you know, messing with her legal pad. She's doing some of her plexiglass gazing. And I think perhaps it's because she was nervous, because our next witness was Detective Jose Morales. Detective Morales, in 2023, he worked for the Los Angeles Sheriff's Office in the West Hollywood branch. He was presented with alleged domestic violence restraining order violations pertaining to Ioan and Bianca as the protected parties and Alice as the restrained party. He investigated those allegations. So we turned first to page one of the exhibits to Ioan's renewal application, which is an email that he had sent. It's got a number of redactions in it. So he says he does recognize the email and confirms I was able to link, the email states, I was able to link a phone number belonging to the restrained person to one of the counts. And Peter again is doing the questioning, asks him, please expound upon that. So he says he did some search warrants for Twitter, and one of them, a phone number was linked. So he called the number and Ms. Evans answered. He doesn't remember the name of that particular account. So then he is directed to another exhibit and asked if he recognized that handle as the one that he had linked to the number. And yes, he did. And that handle was at Mitzi Cooey 89363. So he linked it to her number, asked, what did she say? He says, I don't remember exactly, but she answered the phone. She denied being the person who had created the account. And she said, someone else might have had her number and opened the account, and she had deactivated her original Twitter account. I wonder who that someone else, who is that someone else? Who's that someone else that might have set up this account using her phone number? Who would even know her phone number? So we got a very limited universe of people who could have set up this account. Asked if he's aware of a hearing in West Hollywood about the alleged violation around January 16th of 2023. He says he doesn't remember. He didn't remember a lot, which I mean is understandable for an investigation he did 3 years ago. But he says he was involved initially. He did receive a violation that he presented to the court around that time, and that was an incident of a violation over an email where she had tried to contact him about insurance, and he presented the case to the DA for consideration. And that was all that we did on direct examination. The good stuff really came out on cross. You know, there's nothing wrong with not asking any questions on cross. If you don't know what you're going to get, or you don't have something specific that you're trying to elicit, it's totally okay to not ask any questions on cross, because it's not actually your job to try to make everybody look like an asshole. Like, that's not the purpose of cross-examination. And so if that's all you can do, you should really give it some thought. Maybe just go ahead and sit your ass down and don't do more damage. So we start with the email that he had sent that said that several of the IP addresses came back to Brisbane, Australia. The redacted text of the email asked if he remembered what the rest of the email said. He doesn't remember. He also doesn't remember who he sent this email to. The account was linked to the number that he used to call Alice, but he does not remember if there was other contact information like an email or anything like that that was linked. He received information from Twitter for more than 5 accounts. Bianca had provided him, sorry about the alarm, you guys can hear that, hopefully it goes off soon. Bianca had provided the names of the accounts that he searched for. He doesn't remember much as far as what he got from the returns, if the accounts had both phone number and email addresses. Can you guys hear that? It's super annoying. I'm hoping it will just stop. Let me drink a little more water. It's not going to just stop. We love the city. Don't we love the city? I don't love the city. It's great in small doses, but I'm not a city girl. Wouldn't want to live in the city. Hallelujah. So he says he just remembered seeing the phone number, and he did not recall that there were any other phone numbers that he received that he called. So on November 23rd, he had in November of 2023, maybe, he had a phone call with Alice. He doesn't remember how long the phone call was. It was suggested it was about 40 minutes, but he didn't remember how long it was. He agreed that Alice denied she was associated with the accounts. But one of the IP addresses came up to West Hollywood, and he said yes. In fact, Charter Communications did. It came back to her address in West Hollywood. Janina elicited this, that one of the IP addresses came back to her address in West Hollywood. And Janina says, well, aren't you aware she was living in Beverly Hills then? And he says, well, yes, she was then. But for the time frame when the messages were being posted in early 2023, that was the time frame for the search warrant. So, aren't you aware she moved to Beverly Hills in mid-2023? He's like, yeah, I did. I did know that. I did know that. So just a coincidence, I guess, that some other random person, created a troll account, a fake account to troll Ioan and Bianca, and had happened to buy and move into Alice's old house and register an IP address there. Isn't that remarkable how that happened? There's so many coincidences in this case. It really is crazy. I feel like they should maybe buy a lottery ticket or something, because the luck of the circumstances just really seems to keep adding up here. Did you tell Alice that you were frustrated with Bianca coming every week with several social media accounts? And he said, yes. And I told her to please stop, meaning Alice. I told Alice, yes, I did tell her that. And I also told Alice to please stop, because I don't want to arrest her. Alice had presented this in her declaration as though Detective Morales had been like, oh yeah, you know, Bianca, she's just such a pain. She's always bringing me this stuff, and I sure wish she wouldn't. No, he's saying he's frustrated because he's having to deal with this because you, Alice, won't stop. And he's concerned he's going to have to arrest you, and he really doesn't want to arrest you for this. That's what he said. He does not remember Alice ever saying that she would provide her phone to him. Also in her declaration, oh, I offered my phone. He does not remember that. He does not remember her saying she would turn herself in if it turned out there was a basis for the arrest, for it to be established. As if that is remotely credible, you know. People say that kind of shit all the time. You say this kind of shit all the time. Oh, it's not me. If you could prove it's me, I'll totally, you know, this, that, and the other. And it's just a big fucking bluff because they know they did it. They just think you can't prove it. That's all this is. So he says he submitted 3 or 4 different violations to the DA's office for filing consideration, but he doesn't remember the outcome. He thinks that they were dismissed. He does know that Alice was not arrested. So then on redirect, we explore this comment some more. And in terms of, you know, the reports, Bianca keeps bringing the reports. Who are you frustrated with? He was frustrated with Alice, not with Bianca. Because she was sending all these messages and he just wanted her to stop. And he was frustrated with the whole thing. He wanted her to grow up and stop. Wanted her to grow up and stop. He doesn't think he said this, you know, made this comment to Bianca. He doesn't recall if he ever met in person with Bianca. On recross, he's just asked if he knows the number of accounts that Bianca reported to be Alice, and he says not exactly, but it's in the ballpark of about 5. So about 5 accounts that Bianca reported, 1 link to her phone, 1 link to her IP. But somehow this is all just a big coincidence. It's just a ploy. I'm sure Alice is the victim again somehow. He's excused. We have another bit of a break. This is like not long after lunch. This is like an hour after lunch. We have our break again, and it's because Iris, it's actually before that. It's like half an hour because it's right before 2. Iris Braiden is supposed to be here at 2. Joe's explaining that she goes to the termination of spousal support. So the judge asks at this point, have you guys talked about the timing of the closings? Like the afternoon now on, you know, long after we thought we were going to do this. Have you guys talked about it? And he says, yes, that the arguments on the closing are going to come today, but we'll do this witness first. Peter reports that she texted that she had hit traffic and she's going to arrive about 2:10. So we pause, we take our afternoon break while Iris gets there. The judge also asks if it's possible to end at 4 today because he has a Zoom meeting. And so Joe estimates his argument's going to take about 45 minutes. Janina estimates about 20 minutes from her. The judge says, first thing tomorrow will be my ruling. First thing tomorrow will be my ruling. Now, unfortunately, they didn't get all the way through the arguments today, so it won't be first thing tomorrow, but it does give me very high hopes that we are going to get the ruling on the DVRO renewal tomorrow. We take the afternoon break. When we come back, the scarf is back on, the jingle bracelet is jingling, and Iris Braiden is sworn. She appears in person. Peter is again handling the direct examination. She testifies she was acquainted with Ioan because she lived in the same building. They would park next to each other and they became friendly as neighbors. And that is how she became known to Alice. In 2022, she had interactions with the parties and or the kids because Ioan asked her to chaperone his Saturday visits with the kids. He knew that she had expertise in kids, with kids. Specifically, she has a degree in early childhood special education, and she has cared for children since she was 14 years old. So she said she chaperoned for close to a year, beginning in November or December of 2022. Okay, guys, this is pretty bad, and I'm really sorry I have to report this, but it happened in the courtroom and I saw it, so I'm gonna share it. Alice had hiked her skirt all the way up to like middle of her thigh underneath the table. She's got her skirt like hiked all the way up and, you know, her legs hanging out. I don't know what she was doing. Maybe she was just hot, but it was more inappropriate than I am accustomed to seeing, even from like some of the really, really bad criminal defense clients. I don't think I've ever seen anyone hike their skirt all the way up to the middle of their thighs in the middle of their trial. But it happened. It happened. I saw it. Wish I hadn't. So first, Iris testifies that on December 23rd of 2022, she was on a visit. On this one, she drove with the girls to and Ioan to pick up their dog. They were all going to the park. She had her dog, Ioan had his dog, and they were going to pick up the girls' dogs. And at this point, Alice came outside and said, "I've heard so much about you. Thank you for taking such good care of the girls." And this was the first statement that she heard from Alice during the visits, but there were others that she heard. On December 10th of 2022, the girls had come by, and so they walked in the garage. They were getting in the car. They had a whole day planned. Ioan had told them all to put their phones in the middle console so that they could have quality time, just converse and not have the phones and things like that. She said they refused because he told them they had broken the trust because they had been recording the conversations at their mother's request. This is moved to strike as hearsay, and that is granted. It is stricken. So she just says that the eldest child did not want to put her phone in the console, and so she ended up calling her mother, and Iris overheard her over the phone, Alice, saying, "This is crazy, this is abuse, call 911 and get out of there. This is abuse. Call 911 and get out of there," rather than put your goddamn phone down. Did Alice like have a parent? I have to wonder. I really do. Did anybody ever say no? Did anybody ever establish boundaries? Did anybody ever like show how you do that? You set rules for children, you set expectations. Sometimes they don't like it. And that's too freaking bad. They're the kids. It's your job to lead them, teach them appropriately, teach them respect. So put your phone in the console. That's crazy. That's abuse. I mean, it's so histrionic. And it just raises the question: is it really histrionic like that, or is it just insincere bullshit, just trying to work the kids up into something that is clearly not justified by the circumstances? Kind of hard to say, but either way, pretty clearly an overreaction. There was another visit in spring of 2023 where at this point things had gotten progressively worse with the kids, where they were leaving the visitation. But this one time they did stay. They had gone out to get coffee. Ioan had a whole day of activities planned. So as the car was headed to the next activity, the oldest started to open the car door and get out, said that she threw a fit. She was screaming. She called him a pussy and other terrible things. This is objected to as hearsay, and that is overruled. So then the oldest daughter got on the phone. She heard Alice saying, "Where are you now? Just run home. Just run home. Like, just get out of the car that's moving and run home. This is the parent. This is the parent. This is the concern for the safety of the child." Who the hell would tell the child to do something like that? Get out and run home because of why? Like, they haven't even established like that anything provoked that. They were going to an activity. Run home? Why? What's so unsafe here that the obvious unsafe alternative of getting out of the car and running home in the middle of Los Angeles is the better option? Kind of extreme, isn't it? Sure seems like it would require some extreme circumstances to justify that. But nothing. Nothing. So Ella, the older child, she was trying to run out in the middle of the street, and Iris just let Ioan know that she had heard Alice, saying about them running home. In another occasion, there was a visit where they, in the spring of 2023, where they went to the police station to do the exchange. They started doing the pickups and drop-offs at the police station. And she says that the girls, they arrived late, and they ran into the station. Alice followed them. Then they all ran out and drove off, and all three of them gave her and Ioan the middle finger. And so that visit didn't happen. The judge repeats this. He's like, so you were arriving or you were picking up from, like, what was this, a drop off? She's like, no, this was the pickup. And you were doing this at the police station, yes. And walks her kind of back through it to make sure he's got it clear. Yes, this is what happened. All three of them gave them the middle finger, and then the visit didn't happen. She's shown an exhibit that is where she is named as a witness. She was identified to testify about the custody dispute, and it was dated January 24th. Then she is shown what she identifies as one of many abusive texts from Alice's brother, who she had never met or heard of. She then clarifies it's not a text, it's a post, it's a social media post. And she told Ioan later when she was receiving these messages. The judge interjects at this point and asks, why is this relevant? He wants to know why this is relevant. Peter says, as soon as she was named as a witness, she received a slew of harassing posts. Iris, he says, is relevant to the termination as well as credibility and witness intimidation. Janina says, well, but we have a stipulation on custody. This is about custody. And she says, I did a meet and confer with custody counsel today. And if we're going to go into this and I have to cross on this, then I'm going to maybe need to cross on the custody evaluation. I don't know why you would cross this witness with the custody evaluation. What does she doesn't have anything to do with the custody evaluation. So I'm not really seeing that, but that's what Janina is saying. The judge says we are not having a trial on custody. That is over. They have a final order, and although I have expressed some concerns about it, it is not at issue. Peter says, well, but this is also indirect harassment and abuse to the petitioner. because she was his witness and chaperone. And so it's an incident of violation of the DVRO, these texts. So the judge wants to know, when did this happen? Peter is saying he wants to give an offer of proof. So she was named as a witness. These posts happened multiple times. The first was January 31st of 2023. Then on June the 12th of 2023, the judge wants to know, does Alice participate in any of these? Peter says yes, and Janina says no. And the judge says, well, I see one on page 3. And maybe there are others on page 4 or page 5. Well, the judge says, you know, what Alice is doing is what's relevant here, you know, not Tony, unless you actually call Tony, and then Janina has to clarify, you know, he's dead. And Alice had her first little pity me, my brother who was engaging in this harassment campaign with me against a witness to my abusive parenting. He's gone. He can't testify. I'm so sad. We turned to page 4 of this exhibit, which was another series of messages. These were posts that were calling her horrific, untrue names, the worst thing that someone who is an advocate for kids can be called. She was horrified and disgusted, but this was not the first time that she was being bullied. And she believed these messages were coming from Alice because the account was Mitsikui 89363. She believed that this post was sent on June the 12th of 2023. Janina objects on several grounds. The judge overrules the relevance objection. He thinks this is relevant, but has not yet been adequately authenticated or foundation established. So Peter asks, he can continue to try to establish the foundation. So he asked, why do you think this was Alice? And she said, well, this was sending consistent, abusive, harassing messages from this account to Ioan, to me, and to Bianca. So Janina objects that I don't think it's established that this account was Alice. There's no showing that any of these accounts were Alice. There's evidence that random people were online commenting, right? The no evidence tell. We just heard from the fucking detective. Okay? Gotta think there's some evidence here. But no evidence is what they always say when it's an inference, when it's circumstantial evidence, when it just requires us to use a couple of the brain cells. It's really all it takes to be able to make the connection. That's when they say there's no evidence. Peter says, actually, it has been established that this particular account was linked to her phone number. She confirmed it was her phone number. It is statements from a fake account. But the judge wants to know, how does this relate to the renewal? He says it seems to be at the time of the custody dispute. And Peter says, well, it's about continuing harassment by Alice. It shows her intent to intimidate and harass their witness. But the judge says in a proceeding that's already resolved. That's not to say it's not important, but it's not relevant. So he sustains the objection. He had previously overruled the relevance objection, but now he reverses himself and he sustains it on relevance. So we don't get into that. And Janina has to have this little aside. Well, I don't know how this is relevant to the request to terminate spousal. Well, perhaps let them make their case. I started to I have, and over the past couple days, I've expressed, a little bit of trepidation about just kind of how this case has been divided, how they've split it up into these two different issues, but there is so much overlap that it's kind of confusing. It seems like the judge might be getting a little confused. And the problem is, I think that it just treats them as more distinct issues than they really are. And I kind of wish at this point that they had just said, look, this is all too intertwined. We need to hear all of the evidence and then just take the argument, on the issues. Because I think what's happening is the judge is trying very hard to kind of categorize everything that's being presented in front of him. And he's still categorizing things in the DVRO renewal, even though they've told him like over and over and over again, we've rested on the DVRO renewal. And it's clear that he's not making the connection to how this is relevant to the argument to terminate spousal support. The only thing they really had was a kind of offhand comment, I think it was yesterday, that that Joe made about, it goes to the 4320 factors, the 4320 factors. Okay, so yeah, I had to go look up, what is he talking about? The 4320 factors. So I will share that with you guys. Is that up? Here it is, Family Code section 4320. And so this is a code section that deals specifically with the support order. When the court is going to order support, spousal support, what's he take into consideration? These are the factors. And the issue is, there's like a whole bunch of these. So they have a premarital agreement, which at least in theory, kind of takes a lot of this off the table, because you do spousal because they said they were going to do spousal. This is kind of presumptively for cases where there isn't an agreement like that. But Joe had made the comment about public policy. And what he is talking about is this section down here, section I. This is a factor for the court to consider when they're considering a spousal support award. Any documented history of domestic violence between the parties or perpetrated by either party against either party's child, including but not limited to consideration of a plea of nolo contendere, that is no contest, that is not an admission of guilt, but they can consider it anyway, and emotional distress resulting from domestic violence perpetrated against the supported party by the supporting party. Meaning, if Ioan were abusing Alice, that would be something that they could consider. But also any history of violence against the supporting party by the supported party. Issuance of a protective order after a hearing, we already have that. And a finding by a court during the pendency of a divorce, separation, or child custody proceeding or other proceeding that the spouse has committed domestic violence. So this is why he's bringing it up. And as we're going to see in maybe, I don't know. I think part of the problem here is he keeps making a distinction between the pre-DVRO filing allegations and then evidence of additional abuse that was not part of the DVRO application. Because he's focused on the DVRO renewal and the burden to establish the factual predicate. And so he said, these things, if they weren't part of the original DVRO application, then they aren't, relevant to establishing the predicate. The problem that I don't think has been clearly articulated, and that he doesn't seem to understand, is that what the petitioners are trying to do is show that above and beyond the allegations that supported the domestic violence restraining order, there were other acts of violence, domestic violence, that are pertinent under the statute, that show the history of domestic violence and potentially abuse of the children and things like that. And so they seem to be the judge seems to be kind of operating under this perception that I feel very strongly it needs to be corrected, that just because he filed a DVRO application focusing on certain types of abuse, that's all the abuse that there was. And there's no legal obligation that says you have to include every incident of domestic violence in your DVRO application. And once again, I just get back into, if we reversed the genders here, if we reverse the genders, would we be telling a female victim, no, sorry, I don't like the timing of your disclosures. You weren't ready to disclose it then. It's too late now. I'm just highly skeptical that that's the attitude that we would be taking, because this is one of those kind of fundamental, precepts of what I think of as the feminist approach to domestic violence, which would be all fine and good if we actually universally applied these principles equally to men and women. But the problem is, it seems we don't do that. They only get applied to women. But we understand, yeah, it can, this is an abuse affects people. It can take them a while to come to terms with what they've experienced. It can take them a while to be comfortable with coming forth and making an accusation that it happened. And so this is getting real DV tropey for me, that like, oh, because you didn't disclose it immediately, therefore didn't happen, or we don't consider it, or it doesn't matter, you don't get to rely on it. There's nothing in the law that says that. So that's what's been on my mind a little bit as we've been kind of going further down this road, and we get a little bit more entangled between what's DVRO renewal, what's not, and does the judge really understand what we're doing here and why? And I would really like to see that clearly articulated. Judge, we are dealing with 4320 incidents of abuse. No, he didn't put it in his domestic violence restraining order. He wasn't comfortable disclosing it at that time. He already testified why, because she was threatening that she would publicly accuse him of abusing his children in the worst possible way. And were he a woman, I don't think we would be criticizing his timing, the timing of his decision, his being ready to disclose. We're only judging this adversely because he's a man. No, I don't think if the roles were reversed, they would be having these concerns. So I don't know if that's going to get clarified. I really don't, but it does concern me a little bit that the judge seems to not clearly understand why are we talking about termination, and how does this pre-DVRO stuff fit in? I'd like to see an explanation of that. I don't know if we're going to get an opportunity to do that, at least, until they're closing on the termination issue. So he doesn't know how it's relevant. While acting as a chaperone, the only in-person communication that Iris had with Alice was the one in December of 2022 at the house, but there was another that she had in January of 2025. And on this occasion, she was in Trader Joe's on 3rd Street with a gentleman that she cares for who has dementia. She saw Alice and the girls, and she was hoping that they didn't see her, but Alice did in fact see her, and she came running up and accosted Iris. "Are you Iris Braiden?" Iris says she brought up her Jewish heritage, rather like the slur on Bianca, kind of like that. Seems to be a thing with Alice. brought up her Jewish heritage, said, I'd never seen you on TV, but yeah, I guess you want to be an actor. So Alice, accosts her like this. Iris says that she was shaken, and the man that she was caring for that was with her, he was confused, didn't know what was going on. We have admitted a social media post from Alice, and Iris describes it as explaining the opposite of what actually happened in the Trader Joe's, as if Iris had run up and accosted her. She posted it, she said, a day or so later. Some of the things in it, Iris did not say, and the rest of it is projection. It is Alice putting her own words in Iris's mouth. I love that somebody finally has like gotten this concept out in court, use the word projection. That's what Alice does. That's what Alice does. We've seen this a million times. We've seen this so many times. Johnny Depp's like very first declaration about Amber Heard, she always accuses other people of the bad things that she herself has done. That's what these people do. So I'm glad it finally got called out specifically for what it is. She projected. And she was saying that I said the things that she said. This is objected to on relevance grounds. That is overruled. So the judge apparently is interested in 2025. Really not clear why, but this comes in. So she says she felt shaken. She let Ioan and Bianca know. And she also went to the police department and made a report because she wanted it documented. So the police report comes into evidence, at least the paragraph that she wrote that explained what the incident was. She said she filed it 1 or 2 days after it happened because she was working the day of. And it's all true and correct in the incident description. So Janina's objections to that on hearsay, foundation, and relevance grounds are all overruled. We have cross-exam. She starts first with the trip to the police office, the police department, to pick up the kids for the visit. And isn't it true the kids were waiting inside for 20 minutes before Alice went in after them? And Iris says, I don't believe it was that long. And when Alice greeted you isn't it true that when Alice first greeted you at her home and the incident she had at Trader Joe's, those are the only in-person contacts you had with Alice? She says, no, that's not right, because I saw her and was given the finger by her at the police station. So that's 3. So yes, those are the 3 times she had in-person contact. And 2 of the 3 of those are pretty unpleasant and hostile, aren't they? I guess once she figured out maybe she couldn't manipulate Iris or something like that. Who knows? That was all for Cross. That was all they wanted to hear on Cross. So Iris, they said, she's subject to recall for a different purpose. And the judge clarifies that that hasn't been tried yet. And they say yes. And I'm thinking to myself, what else is there? What else is there that hasn't been tried? Are you suggesting custody is going to come back up? I mean, the judge seemed to just make it kind of clear that it wasn't going to come back up, but maybe the meet and confer didn't go so well. Maybe there is no meeting of the minds as to how to revise the stipulation. I don't know. But I found this to be a very obscure remark, because he said, we've rested on the DVRO. She's here to talk about termination. There's nothing else that they aren't trying. This is supposed to be a trial of all the remaining issues. So I really don't know what to make of that comment. The judge agreed to release, let her go, but not release her, not excuse her. But he ordered Joe to notify her immediately if they determined that she was going to be released. And he says that they're hoping to be here just this week. They're hoping to be here just this week. That doesn't sound real promising to me. It just doesn't. It just doesn't, because hope springs eternal. But The scheduling has been a real problem so far. We still have, for this part of the case, we got closings to finish. We've got presumably Bianca still to testify on termination, Ioan still to testify, Alice still to testify. Alice had the other witness that she wanted to call to testify. So we're going to have 2.5 days to do that if we go on Friday. Janina doesn't want to go on Friday, although she hasn't said anything to the judge yet. So I don't know if that's going to end up being a thing or not. But 1.5 days, if it does, there's no way they're getting this done in 1.5 day. And even, 2.5 is probably pushing it. So I'm just, and then even if they do go 2.5, they're not going to have time to close. Like, I just am not really seeing a scenario, unfortunately, at this point, where this gets done this week. And the fact that the judge was, happily volunteering additional court time just seems to make it even less likely, because now there's no pressure. There's no pressure to get it done. So we can go ahead and come back. Oh, I don't want this. I really don't, for so many reasons. I don't like seeing the weight that Ioan is carrying throughout this process. I haven't described him much in court. And the reason why is because much of court he spends like this. He spends sitting with his head down, like looking down. He is not enjoying this at all. So I don't want to see this drag on and on and on and continue to add to the stress and the distress. I don't like the idea of the decisions being made when the information, the evidence, the process isn't fresh. I already don't like this about the DVRO, the fact that the judge is expected arguments and a decision back last week, and it hasn't happened, and then it was going to be Monday and it hasn't happened. Things are getting stale while you wait. That's the risk. He seems to be kind of keeping himself fresh with the new stuff that wasn't really intended to be for the DVRO renewal, but he's seeing it as relevant to that. So maybe that's all okay. But just really don't like that. The only real positive that I can see about it is it gives them a little bit more time to point out, say they come back in April. Okay. We pause, come back 5-6 weeks later. They're going to be able to come back and point out, see, Alice still hasn't corrected any of this shit. She still hasn't made a public apology. She still hasn't gone to anger management. She still hasn't done any of the stuff that she's been on notice. Would be a good idea for her to do to kind of turn this ship around. But you don't need that. As far as the trade-off goes, I don't like it. I don't like it. I really don't. So this whole idea of hoping it's just here this week, don't like it. But that's where we're at. When Iris was getting off the stand, Alice is mad now. I can see she's clenching her jaw, the jaw muscle is coming out. The judge pauses now. He addresses Alice and he wants to say, please pardon my bringing up your brother. I read, I remember reading, but I had forgotten that he had passed away, and I just forgot, and I'm very sorry about that. And Alice, thank you so much. So then we move straight into closings. Closings on the request for renewal of the permanent restraining order. And we start with Joe. So Joe begins by laying out the applicable legal authorities. He just basically cites a whole bunch of law. The standards, the cases. The standard for the extension is whether the protected parties have a reasonable fear of future abuse. In considering it, the court must consider the totality of the circumstances, including, but not limited to, the underlying facts supporting the initial order. And in fact, according to the Ritchie case itself, where these factors kind of originated, the underlying facts may themselves often be enough to satisfy the standard for renewal. It's because it's like, I don't know, so bad that the fear is going to be reasonable. Whether the failure to extend orders may jeopardize the safety of parties or children is a factor to consider. He cites to the family code for this. There were a couple things that were super relevant to this in my mind that didn't come out at the trial, and I wish that they had. And the two things specifically, well, I guess the whole like, they focused on Alice sent the mail, her mail to his new house. But that, it's not like the strongest evidence, because it could legitimately, I guess, be like a mistake, hard to believe, but not impossible. But the fact that she had put in her own declaration that she filed the same day the description of their new apartment with the pool and the fitness room and the loads of natural lighting, she knew where the fuck they moved. And she wasn't supposed to know that. And that is stalker behavior years after he left her. That is such a red flag. Once again, reverse the genders. And tell me you're not going to be concerned for the physical safety of this woman who is still being hunted down by the man she left 5 years ago. So the stalker behavior that reflected, it's not in front of the court. They can't rely on that. I don't like that. I don't like that. I think it's a very important fact that wasn't brought out. And then the other thing I really wish had come out at some point, because it very much relates to this, is a tweet that Alice made at some point where she called Betty Broderick inspirational. She called Betty fucking Broderick inspirational. Betty Broderick, like the queen of Medea syndrome, vengeance, murdered her ex-husband and his new wife in their beds while they slept. Inspirational. If that's not an implicit threat of physical violence, I'm not sure what is. Okay, that's some scary shit. And when you pair that with the active stalking 5 years still down the road, does this give someone reasonable concern that their physical safety is an issue? Sure as hell would to me. I wouldn't have any problem making that finding. But the judge didn't hear those facts. And that troubles me. It really does. It really troubles me. But that's one of the factors for the court to consider. Also, whether there have been significant changes in the circumstances such that a risk of future abuse has been effectively eliminated. Things are different now. He cites many cases that upheld restraining order extensions based on lack of changed circumstances. One, that there was insufficient evidence that the party had moved on with their life. One, there's no changed circumstances when a party failed to comply with court orders. One where there was no changed circumstances even when the reporting party went to anger management. One where the parties lived thousands of miles apart and it was still upheld. So he said there were no safe harbors, there's no bright line rules, but real change is required to support this element. I started running out of my yellow pad, so I'm having to like use the little like ends of my old legal pads. So I'm going to be flipping through a couple of them here. I do have more paper, but it won't be yellow pads tomorrow anyway. The third factor is the seriousness of and the risk of the future abuse, including potential physical abuse. Once again, like the Betty Broderick thing would have been super helpful, and the stalker stuff would have been super helpful. He cites a case for the proposition that the fear of future abuse doesn't have to be the same type of abuse as the abuse that underlied the original restraining order, which kind of makes sense, because that would not really give you meaningful protection, because people can adapt, people can change and modify their approach to how they go about their abuse in order to be able to tiptoe around the boundaries of the order. So that seems like a very common sense proposition to me. And that also, frankly, seems to be the argument to make in this case, right? Because we know Alice is going to argue changed circumstances. Oh, she's different. She's not on Twitter now. She's not, tweeting as, or, doing the stuff on Instagram as prolifically as she used to, and stuff like that. Yeah, that's because she's found ways to try to hide her tracks, to get other people to do it for her, or to make these fake accounts. She's adapted to the limitations that the restraining order imposes. It hasn't stopped her. She's just modified her tactics. The protected party does not have to show a violation to get an extension. Case to that effect, but a restrained party's violation itself is sufficient basis for reasonable fear of future abuse. Cites a case for that. Any restraining order violation is, quote, very serious and gives significant support for renewal, unquote. That is from a case, and there is no de minimis violation of a permanent restraining order. It's basically what he's saying. Any violation is serious. So this whole like, oh, Bianca's, annoying the police officer with her reports of all the different accounts, or just, whatever. There's no de minimis, okay? If you think it's petty, or you want to try to present it that way anyway, because, you did it and you're trying to minimize it, it doesn't matter. Any violation is showing this person doesn't respect the order and they are trying to evade it. They just maybe aren't very good at staying all the way outside the lines. Two other factors for the court to consider. In this particular case, he wants the court to consider many violations of the restraining order, as well as other court orders, and her long history of harassment and disturbing the peace of Ioan and Bianca. He says there's almost too many violations to count in this case. The long history indicates that the abuse is not merely situational, but it reflects a pattern of power and control exercised by Alice. He's not pulling his punches when it comes to the calling out the coercive control element of all of this, because that is what it is. It is written large on all of those communications in the DVRO application, the original one. The insults, the threats, the blackmail, these are all control tactics. And then we've seen her carry it out. It's all about trying to force him to do what she wants to do, regardless of how he feels about it. So Joe is not, he's not dancing around that issue. This is what it is. This is coercive control. We turn to the facts. The history of the abuse, he cites numerous, pieces of evidence that have been admitted. This exhibit, that exhibit, these texts, that voice recording, this other voice recording, the emails, the Our Family Wizard messages, etc., etc. She says the abuse has Joe says the abuse has jeopardized the physical safety and financial well-being of the protected parties and their infant daughter. Alice had said that her purpose was to hurt Ioan economically by damaging his public image and his career. And her public social media campaign has engendered a reasonable fear of economic abuse. Bianca also testified to threats of physical violence from Alice's followers. And it creates a reasonable fear that some unhinged follower of Alice will get riled up by what she posts and will harm them. It's a good point. It's a good point. It isn't just Alice herself that's the potential danger here. Although I would love to establish that. But yeah, that's the risk that one of her loonies, one of these weirdos that gravitates to her, is gonna take things way too far. He says there's been no change, no real change. The risk of future abuse is not eliminated. There's many violations in evidence. The exhibit, the renewal application recites multiple repeated violations. The two only, I keep saying only. I see the OF and I think OnlyFans, but it's Our Family Wizard. The two Our Family Wizard messages from May of 2023 and September of 2023 both violate the order. There were two violations of the temporary order. There were violations on December 9th and December 11th of 2022. Also violations on December 5th and December 9th. There was a February 11th of 2023 violation. There were 14, he counts 14 social media violations in 2024, 11 social media violations in 2025. There was a social media violation June 18th of 2022. Two more social media violations in July of 2024. A whole series of social media violations in February of 2025. Violations of the stay away order at the 3rd Street Elementary School, at the Beverly Boulevard, and the violation of the stay away order and the order not to photograph at the court hearing. Seems like that is maybe going to come back to bite little Alice. Such a shame that terrible internet troll showed up at court that day. Look what that troll made Alice do. I think that one might come back and bite her. She violated orders not to disclose the child custody proceedings and information about the child custody in social media posts, as well as in her unredacted brief that she filed. So based on this, Ioan and Bianca have a reasonable fear that she will continue to harass and disturb their peace because she's done it since the order was entered. Alice's smear campaign spanned 5 years, 2021 through 2025, including 3 years of continuous abuse following the restraining order. The record shows that her own words show that she deliberately violated the order out of an insatiable desire to seek revenge for Ioan daring to divorce her. Her campaign of public abuse violates the public policy of no-fault divorce, and it demonstrates coercive control in her use of the children. She has failed to eliminate risks, and she can't remediate the damage she's done just by taking down posts because they are all over the internet. They are available for all to see, including her own children. She has not remediated the damage to them because they have suffered the abuse of being portrayed as adulterers, pedophiles, child abusers, a deadbeat dad who doesn't pay support for his children all the way through 2025. The false and unremediated narrative that she has promulgated, she has not done anything to cure that. He says a restrained party's tears might be the start to a long road of remediation, but it is nowhere near enough to remediate the fear of abuse because she hasn't proved that she's moved on. Her buzzwords are contradicted by her actions. Examples: she hasn't owned up to her violations of the stay away order. Why go through the charade of telling the court that she didn't know the divorce was happening until March of 2021, when her own communications, her own course of conduct shows that to be untrue? Her social media posts speak for themselves of her defiance towards orders of the court. He cites to Exhibit 24, which was recently repeated by her, where she admits violating the order despite knowing that sanctions, jail, loss of spousal support are potential consequences. She does it anyway. She is still using court process to air her false grievances. She did this through her unredacted brief and through her untimely response to the renewal, the request for renewal, the one that she filed like 3 days before trial started. The comments that she's made of regret at trial, her misusing her ability to manipulate the media does not retract or refute anything that she said. It doesn't allay their fear. Has she taken out an ad to retract her false allegations? No. She went on TV and radio to air all of her false claims, and she hasn't gone on there to recant. There is insufficient evidence of Alice working on the root causes of her abusive behavior. She quit therapy a year ago, and it didn't stop her abusive behavior anyway. She has mocked reunification and parenting classes. The judge intervenes at this point. He says, I didn't hear evidence about that. I just heard evidence about stopping therapy. Joe says it's in evidence where she says, I don't need to go to parenting classes. I've been parenting the kids all their lives. So he says, I'll find you the citation for that. She's never taken steps to reform her character. It's easily it's an easily manufactured the claim, you know, that she's regretful, or that the claim that she's lost work is easily manufactured, and it's contradicted by what she said as well as what she didn't say and didn't produce. She never disclosed anything, any evidence of lost work, despite being required to do so in her deposition request. So her argument that she's lost work is not timely raised or presented. But even assuming she has received backlash over her conduct, who should be responsible for that? Certainly not the victims of her abuse. That was Joe's closing. That was his closing. He did stick to right about the 40-45 minutes that he said he was going to take. So then we move on to Janina. Janina does not stick to her 20 minutes allotted. She goes on and on and on. And in a way that I don't believe and certainly hope is not going to be beneficial, because as you're going to see, really, like every domestic violence trope, it's trotted out. It's trotted out in this argument. No sign of the remorse that Alice was going to such trouble to try to present on the stand. None of that. A lot of excuses, denial, explanation, blame shifting. The classic abuser tactics, like really got carried out in Janina's argument. So she starts that she's not going to repeat the applicable law that Joe just cited. She just has one case to cite, and it was one where the court found the respondent to be the more credible witness. And the protected party had claimed multiple violations. And in that case, the trial court denied renewal, and the Court of Appeals upheld that decision because it found the restrained party had acted appropriately in each instance, and that the protected party had used the DVRO to defame the restrained party. So in other words, absolutely nothing at all like our circumstances here. Absolutely nothing at all, because Ioan has not said a goddamn word to this day, about his divorce or any of it. And the one thing Bianca said, she's the victim of an abuser. And that is true, objectively true. And how do we know that? Because she's protected by a domestic violence restraining order that is predicated on a finding of abuse. So basically nothing at all like this case. The restrained party acted appropriately in every instance. How are you going to explain that photograph in court, Janina? Oh, you'll see. So to determine whether Ioan has a reasonable apprehension of abuse, the court's to consider the three Ritchie factors. 1, the factual predicate for the original DVRO. 2, any significant change in the circumstances after the order was issued. And 3, whether and how the domestic violence restraining order burdens the restrained party. This apparently is a factor that is only considered when there is no physical abuse isn't an issue. All the more reason why I wish that stalking and that Betty Broderick text were in evidence. So she starts with the factual predicate. And the record is clear that the factual predicate is sending harassing messages and social media postings on Instagram and Twitter. The case is not about the multiple allegations that were made in the request to renew. She says it's incredible that Mr. Langois is arguing that Alice is using the litigation to promulgate her campaign when he makes new claims he didn't make in the original restraining order. Trope number 1, didn't disclose it immediately. Therefore, didn't matter, didn't happen, not important, can't use it, not credible. All of the things. Didn't disclose it immediately, therefore. So we got our perfect victim trope. I'm trying to read my word here because she used an adjective. I can't read it. Sorry. But the allegation that, like, oh, preposterously. He preposterously alleged that she gave cocaine to the kids. Preposterous. And that she assaulted him. And that he claimed the bruise on her arm. You know, she threatened that she was going to claim the bruise on her arm was caused by him. But the only allegations in the original application that he made was that she made false and harassing posts, statements to media, communications to him, emails to his mother, and then since learning of the relationship with Bianca, she also harassed Bianca on social media. And then in his supplement to the original application, he provides additional information about new postings she did after the TRO, but it doesn't mention any physical abuse or child abuse, like giving cocaine to the kids, which is clearly child abuse. Yeah, I agree it is. I agree it is. But it's all okay because, you know, Alice had a conversation with Ella about that. So she's not worried about that at all. The DVRO protects Alice's free speech rights. It allows her to comment on the divorce so long as it's not disturbing the peace of Ioan and Bianca. The new allegations predate his request for the DVRO, but he didn't explain why he didn't include them. He said he was afraid Alice would follow through on her campaign, but that doesn't even make sense because he was already accusing her of conducting that campaign in her DVRO. So it's circular to say that he was afraid Alice would react in the way that he was claiming that she reacted. This is disingenuous because that's not what he testified to. What he said very specifically is that she threatened to accuse him of abusing the children in that particularly bad way. That is what he testified to. Not that she was going to embark on this general campaign. She threatened an allegation that could put him in jail, in prison, could get him killed in that kind of context. That's what she threatened. So the minimizing, abuser tactic, seeing that one here. But she wants it, so she wants a finding that these allegations aren't credible. She tells the court she wants a finding that these allegations are not credible. Why? Because he's not a perfect victim. He didn't report them immediately. Yeah, that's what these feminists say. That's what they say when it's a man sitting at the other table. So first, the allegation that he witnessed. Oh, by the way, as soon as the very first cocaine, allegation is mentioned the very first time, we get the waterworks. And so throughout this closing, in fact, I think it might have even started in Joe's. It was just the sniffing, constant sniffing and wiping of eyes with the Kleenex. Just overcome with all this. The first allegation that he witnessed Alice give cocaine to the kids on July 14th of 2020, the evidence shows it's not credible. Why? Because he left the kids in Alice's care to shoot the movie. Trope here, how the victim reacts to the violence. What they do, not credible. Not credible. Surely you would just leave. Surely you would XYZ. This is like total disregard of everything these same people have been trying to teach us about abuse dynamics for decades now. Not credible because he didn't react the way I think he should have reacted. He continued to leave the kids with Alice when he moved out in January of 2021. He went to France in June in 2021 and left them there again. He left them when he filed for the TRO in February of 2024. And Ioan didn't even file until July of 2022 for custody, 16 months after his petition for dissolution. So it's simply not credible that he witnessed it. He's a liar. He's a liar, right? Remember how the feminists told us how bad the court process is because it re-victimizes victims, how mindful we need to be trauma-centered in our approach to these types of issues in this context. All goes out the window when you have a man you're just going to call a liar, doesn't it? The allegation of a physical assault on July 14th of 2022, it's also not credible. He gave no details, nothing about the time of day, no evidence that Alice did anything at all. No evidence, right? We're back to the no evidence, as if testimony isn't evidence, as if there isn't an acknowledgement by Alice that, yes, there was in fact conflict that day. And then we see the aftermath. We see the text message where he is trying to appease her. And she's apparently ignoring him. As if that's all not evidence. But no, there's no evidence. Big old tell that there's probably some evidence. And also, he didn't explain it the way that I think he should. So it's not credible. You didn't ask him any of those details, did you? You had him on cross-examination. You didn't ask him for any of those details. And now you're complaining that you don't have those details. Seems like a you problem. A principle, she says, I don't know, maybe this is like the rule of continuity. By the way, I said over the weekend I was going to look up the rule of continuity and try to figure out what the hell she was talking about with this. And like, is this some weird California rule or something like that? And no, I searched far and wide, and the only rule of continuity that appears to exist in the law is a principle of international law. It's a principle that when governments change form, they remain obligated by their prior agreements. And this is a doctrine that exists just to kind of, promote stability in the international order. Otherwise, every time there is an election, people could, potentially rebuke their treaties, That wouldn't necessarily be a good thing. There wouldn't really be a point to having international order. So that's the rule of continuity under the law. I don't know what the fuck she's talking about this whole time with her rule of continuity. Cannot confirm any of it. So if I've said it once, I've said it a million times. The thing about the law, it does not exist in people's minds. It is written down on paper somewhere, and there is a citation for it. And so that is what the practice of law is all about, is being able to find that citation so you can substantiate your argument, your claim about what the law is, and then argue for how it supports your position. So we have no citation to any of this. My conclusion out of all of it is that she's really referring to the rule of completeness, but she's just kind of distorted it and, come up with this other thing. Is that deliberate? Is she deliberately misrepresenting, making something up? I have no idea. Could just be a brain fart. But that's really bad lawyering. You don't make claims you aren't real sure about. And so if you don't have a citation, really shouldn't be saying, the law is X, Y, and Z if you weren't prepared to back it up. It's not going to matter at the end of the day here. I wouldn't expect. But you never know. Might cost her some credibility with the judge. It's like, I've never heard of this. But anyway, this other like uncited principle that if there's weaker evidence that's produced when stronger evidence is available, then you should disregard it. You should not give it much weight. And Alice testified that he was mean to her, and that the text messages that he sent confirmed that. Okay, another trope, another domestic violence trope. It didn't happen because he apologized. He said nice things to her after the fact. He tried to appease her, therefore it didn't happen. How many times do you think domestic violence victims have apologized for provoking their abuser? I bet thousands of times every single day that happens. That is part of the dynamic. That is part of the eggshells. That is part of the cycle. Trying to get out of the active abuse part of the cycle and win the favor of the abuser back so that they'll stop the abuse and they'll go back to the being nice, the love bombing, the, probably not love bombing at this point because you're already vested in the relationship, but back to the honeymoon. Things are good. You're treating me nicely. I can, even if it's just crumbs, I can live with that. That's the fucking cycle. trope. It didn't happen because he's saying nice things to her after the fact. She reads through the messages, you know, again, multiple I love yous, I'm so sorry, etc., etc. Girls are the luckiest to have you as their mommy. Beg for forgiveness. I'm so sorry, my angel. Yeah, that proves the appeasing her. Where the fuck has she ever apologized to him once? You want to talk about no evidence? No evidence he did anything on July the 14th. The evidence is Alice says he was mean to me. And Alice lacks credibility. That's the no evidence. The messages with Lynn Blank from July of 2020, she says this confirms Alice's version of events, that Ioan was cross and he requested forgiveness. Oh, Alice's self-serving statements corroborate Alice's self-serving position? You don't say. Never heard that happening before. So she requests a finding, again with the requesting a finding, that the factual predicate does not include physical abuse. She wants that on the record. The DVRO is not based on allegations of physical abuse. I think that's pretty fucking clear. That's not what the DVRO was based on. But that's also not why he's raising it right now. This doesn't relate to any of that. This relates to the termination. And that's why I'm apprehensive about the way that this has been divided up, because it means that they haven't really gone all the way into all this stuff. Janina is just using it kind of opportunistically at this point, when they haven't, this hasn't been their case. They haven't presented it on the issue of renewal. She just got into it on cross. So I don't like the opportunity that has opened up by just creating a little bit of a muddle about what's relevant to what and why. Regarding the bruise photo, he said he attached a still frame from FaceTime, but his face doesn't appear anywhere on it, and it seems to be more like a recording. Okay, this is like full on making excuses. We're back in a version of it's not possible. Can't be FaceTime because his face isn't on it. Maybe he cropped it. I mean, I don't know. I don't use FaceTime, so I have really no idea if it's like always going to show your face. If there's a way for it to not show your face. I don't freaking know. It's not an evidence. It's not an evidence how FaceTime works and all that. So this is just kind of a bizarre argument. You didn't cross him on that. That would have gotten it into evidence. But you didn't raise it up on the cross. You're just now like arguing facts in your closing that you didn't bring out during the testimony. And there's no corroboration. Oh, yeah, there's another trope, like as if other people would know. As if other people know all about your abusive situation. Isn't that like the first thing that people learn about domestic violence? It happens behind closed doors, and it often happens with people you don't expect it from. So they can put on a very good public face. It's not always the ones that you would suspect that are necessarily the worst, although, you know, sometimes it is. Sometimes it's exactly the ones you would expect, but it isn't always. It isn't always. But no corroboration. So I guess there's a fucking photo is the corroboration. I don't know. I don't know with this argument. And he's only just now alleging it 4 years later, so it's not credible. So therefore he's lying. So the judge interjects at this point with Janina's argument and says, well, I don't think the court can do what you're asking as far as making the findings. That would be an abuse of discretion for me to not consider the totality of the circumstances. And that's what gets court reversed. That's what gets courts reversed, is when they don't do that. And so Janina says, well, I'm just asking you to find them not credible. She just really wants them to be found to be liars. That's her argument. Is this sounding like the remorse and rehabilitation and I've really changed and stuff coming from her lawyer? Find that they're liars, Judge. Oh, by the way, I'm so sorry. I just don't know how. I don't know how you even. I really don't. So she moves now to the second factor, the changed circumstances, and they've changed significantly since the DVRO. Alice, she's in a very different place in her life now. Why? Well, because she self-servingly says so. Before, when all this was going on, she was isolated. It was the end of COVID. The kids were at home. She was mourning the loss of her marriage to Ioan and not speaking to him. And so for how many years do you claim this excuse? Because he didn't even file the restraining order petition for a year after he left. More than a year after he left. But that's her excuse. Well, I was just really grieving. So now we've moved on to the it's not my fault. It's not my fault I was such an abusive bitch. I was grieving for years. Nothing I could do about that but berate this man in all of these messages and threaten him and tell lies to the press and on social media, etc., etc. I was just grieving. That's my grieving style, I guess. She was hopeful that he just wanted a break. He didn't want to actually end the marriage. He just wanted a break. But her hopes were crushed by the sudden public announcement of the relationship with Bianca, and Alice lost her mind. And there we have the look what you made me do. See, if Ioan either hadn't announced it, or better yet, had just, remained single and celibate for the rest of his life, just not ever entered into another relationship, then all of this would have been fine, and Alice wouldn't have had this terrible reaction. So you see, it was all in his control the entire time. That's all he had to do, is bend to her fucking will. You might as well just shout the coercive control here. Because reading between the lines, that's what you just said. That's what you just said. He doesn't have a right to announce his relationship, his new relationship, 10 months after he left you. Without you justifying now this entire course of conduct that you just went to a lot of effort to pretend to be so remorseful for. So I'm just afraid these things don't reconcile very well. I'm not seeing a lot of consistency in the position here. The court saw the emails she sent to her friends that day. She said things like, I feel like dying. Why did he tell me it was my fault? Because it was your fault. We can look at the DVRO application and the way you treated this man, and anybody with more than 2 brain cells to rub together can see why he would leave your ass. And the only question anybody has is, why the hell did it take him so long? We get it. Abuse. Tricky. Complicated dynamic. But holy cow, okay? You're not at fault. We can see with our own eyes what the problem was here. But so it's different now because she no longer has those hopes. And also now she's moving. She's moved on with her life. She went to therapy for 1.5 years, but she stopped. She had to stop because she couldn't afford it anymore. And by the way, Ioan didn't get the health insurance that he's legally required to get her. So now it's the blame shifting. It's his fault. His fault. Alice hasn't been able to move on because he spent 1 year trying to get her cooperation to get the health insurance. And only after he was like, fuck it, does she decide, now's the time. Now's the time you will get me my health insurance. All about bending to her will, doing it her way, on her time. So it's his fault she didn't go to therapy because he didn't get the insurance because apparently he couldn't force it on her for 1 year while she didn't cooperate. The parties now have resolved their child custody dispute. So no issues. They've resolved the child custody dispute. Many of the messages had to do with the disputes with the kids. The house is sold. A lot of the messages had to do with the house. And then there's also greater distance between them now because she's in Encino. So there's less likelihood that they'll just run into each other. Since September of 2024, there's also been temporary orders on as far as support goes. And that's different because some of the messages were asking for help with the finances. So as far as her conduct after the DVRO was issued, they contend, it's their contention that most of the alleged violations of the stay away order are just coincidences. They're the kinds of things that happen when people have kids together and live in close proximity and there's a DVRO involved. It just happens. And that's even more so here because the parties are followed by the media and by the paparazzi and by internet trolls. It's the internet trolls' fault that she stalked them down Beverly Boulevard. Has something to do with us. I don't know what that line of reasoning is. I really don't know what that line of reasoning is. I also kind of like the implicit admission here. Most of the alleged violations, most of them are just coincidences. So the ones that aren't are a problem for you. You do realize that, right? You do realize that. Even if the court buys your talking about your preposterous claim that the parent-teacher conference and the Beverly Boulevard incidents, these are just big coincidences. Yeah, I don't think that like the photography in the courtroom, I don't think you're going to be able to explain that one away so easily. So, yeah, man, that one is really got the potential to come back and bite her pretty hard. The judge at this point just asks her to pause because it's now 4 o'clock. It's like 2 minutes before we are supposed to be done. She has been arguing now for like 25 minutes. And the judge says, I need to email. He's, said he had a Zoom meeting. So he's like, I got to email these people real quick to let them know I'm going to be late. And so I just don't want it to seem like I'm not paying attention to what you're saying. So we pause so he can send the email. We continue with no evidence. No evidence that Alice knew Ioan would be at the parent-teacher conference before she went. The sign-up sheet is pretty good evidence. The sign-up sheet that was publicly available online that his name is on and hers is not, that's some pretty good evidence. She was crushed according to her testimony. A lot of reliance on Alice's testimony here. You really got to believe Alice's testimony, to have much to work with this argument. But, based on her testimony, she didn't even appear at her own DVRO hearing initially. because she was so crushed, she was devastated and unable to see Ioan at that time. We're now a year and a half, more than a year and a half after him leaving her. And she's supposedly so crushed. She's still like talking about him constantly. The TRO is the only thing that stopped the flood of her abuse, texting him, our family wizard messages, emails, all that stuff. And so, you know, why would she well, because she's a lying sack of shit. And that's not why she didn't go to the DVRO hearing. She didn't go to the DVRO hearing because she knew she was going to get her ass handed to her. That's why she didn't go. It had nothing to do with being crushed, unable to see Ioan at that point. It had nothing to do with that. She's actually quite desperate to see him. That's why she stalked him at the parent-teacher conference. That's why she still, years later, wants to know where he lives. She testified she thought her appointment was at 3:30. And by the way, in 2.5 years of custody litigation, this incident, it never came up. He didn't report it correctly. We're back to the trope. Didn't report it when I think he should, the way I think he should. By the way, Alice would have picked the kids up at school anyway that day. She would have picked the kids up at school anyway. I don't know why Ella was even there. This was Elsie's school. She said Elsie had the after school program. But she also said she brought them with her when she went to the conference. So her story is really super all over the place. Ioan hadn't been to a single parent-teacher conference since the separation, according to her testimony. So she didn't communicate with counsel or confirm that she was going to be there. And also, by the way, Ioan didn't notify anybody that he was going. He put his name on the public sign-up sheet, which is what it's for. It's public, so that anybody that's signing up will see it. I go back to this testimony when this was on and the judge being like, that's not how parent-teacher conference signups work, is it? He was not buying this from Alice. That, oh, the nanny was supposed to sign me up and they told the nanny, but somehow it didn't get written down and the nanny told me, but the nanny told me wrong. This is the blaming your underlings thing. Like, there is a buck stops here issue. Alice isn't a lawyer. Alice isn't a professional at all. But I have to wonder how this sits, just because if there's one thing that as a lawyer is like the huge no-no, the thing you don't do if you want respect from other people in the courtroom, you don't blame your staff for your mistakes. The buck stops with you. You're the one that, for example, signs the document. And so if it happens to be full of hallucinated AI citations, it is not actually your assistant's fault. It is yours, because you should have checked them. That's what you signify when you sign a legal document. That is what you certify to. It has a good faith basis in law and fact based on your responsibility as an officer of the court. So you don't throw your staff under the bus. But that's not something Alice is worrying about. This was all just the nanny's fault. Somehow. Total coincidence, by the way. Oh, by the way, you know, she's not blaming Ioan. She's not blaming him for this. But This is one of those where the but like negates everything that comes before the but. I'm not blaming him, but you've just been blaming him for like half an hour, and you're gonna do some more, aren't you? But I'm just highlighting that these things happen when there's a DVRO and there's children that are in common, and there's no malintent, there's just misunderstandings. Nobody told the school about the DVRO, and Alice acted totally appropriately when this happened. She left, she waited at the bottom of the ramp. She didn't even recognize him. And why Ioan didn't finish the parent-teacher conference is beyond me. I thought like 10 seconds ago you just said you weren't blaming him, but you just can't resist, can you? You just can't resist. His fault for not finishing the parent-teacher conference. She just can't help herself. She's got to belittle him. Talk about re-victimizing. Talk about using the court to continue your abuse of the victim. That's what I saw today. That's what I saw. It's probably her, well, at least until we get to the termination, the spousal termination argument. This is like her last good chance to get her licks in. And boy, is she going to take full advantage of it. Alice had her back to the door. She was just waiting her turn, and she said she was shocked and she froze, and that's what the video shows. It doesn't. No, it doesn't. It shows him like storming by her so fast that she doesn't have time to react. She didn't speak. She didn't gesture. She went in and had her own pretrial conference. Or pretrial. There, I said it again. I did it again. With the shorthand. Parent-teacher conference. PTC. Pretrial conference. She had her own parent-teacher conference. So, like, what she didn't do was leave, which is what you're supposed to do when you realize you're where you're not supposed to be. You're supposed to leave. And that's like the one thing she didn't do. No, she just went ahead and had her own parent-teacher conference. And Ioan's attorneys, by the way, they didn't communicate that this was a violation, and he didn't even report it until months later. Back to the trope. Back to the trope. Don't like the timing of you raising this issue. Don't want to acknowledge the nature of the abuse dynamic and how people are afraid and intimidated and often have to build up the nerve to assert themselves and to call out things that are wrong as wrong. The Beverly Boulevard incident, it was just 2 months later, but they lived 5 to 6 blocks away, and their description of it is just not credible. It's just not credible. Ioan says he asked Bianca to record, but the recording, it mostly shows her dog. And Alice's car is only in the video for 2 of the 11 seconds of the video. So it's not credible. Dude, it shows her sitting, they're waiting at the intersection. They're at the intersection. There is clearly a light. The light is clearly like red because the cars aren't moving. And the cars start moving, and she lifts up the camera, and you see Alice's car go by. So to me, it looks really freaking clear that she is trying to be subtle about what she's doing. They know perfectly well that Alice is there in the traffic, and she's just waiting to capture when Alice drives by. I don't know what seems so incredible about this video. It seems very consistent to me with what somebody would do in those circumstances. She said in her deposition, Bianca, that Alice had parked in front of them. No, that's not what she said. That is not what came out in the examination. She said they stopped at a red light. This misrepresentation of the facts, I hope there's multiple instances of it. We've, already called out a couple. There's more. And I certainly hope they get corrected. because it does go to the credibility of the party if your counsel has to mislead the court about what the evidence is. So I very much hope they correct these factual errors in their rebuttal argument. Had she started recording when they said that she started recording, they would have seen her go down to Flores, and they testified she did a U-turn on Flores, and there's a large building there, and there's no way anybody could see the U-turn. That was Alice's whole argument. I don't know how a building on the corner stops you from seeing somebody turn off the street that you're on onto the other street and flip around and come back in. Like, I can't even comprehend the thought process that a building is going to stop you from being able to see somebody do a U-turn on the street that you are on. Not possible, she says. And also the alleged gestures. The alleged gesture, that's not credible, because Bianca didn't say anything about the middle finger up at the deposition, right? Don't like how you reported it. At Alice's deposition, Joe never asked her if she gave the middle finger. He only asked if she waved. And then look at the map that Ioan made. It said nothing about giving a finger. It just has an X on Sweetser, and it says Alice waved. Therefore, the whole thing didn't happen, right? Because whether Alice waved or gave the middle finger is like the critical dispositive issue. She was trying to make herself known to them. She honked, etc. I kind of feel like that's what matters. And they have her on freaking video. But this is just another coincidence. Oh yeah, I remember, Alice. It looks like I was just waving to somebody in the rear view. Just pure coincidence. Maybe now her luck is terribly bad. Just happens to be caught out in all of these things that look terrible but are actually really innocent. So unfortunate. Alice, by the way, said she doesn't remember this incident at all. She didn't remember it at all. Also, we saw the close-up of Alice's reaction when she first saw Ioan at the school. And it's just not credible to believe that months later she's violating the order when she was so scared and frozen. It's just not credible. The photo in court. The photo in court. Yeah, let's get to that. Well, she just was unaware of the rule prohibiting photography. It's plastered fucking everywhere. I did forget to do that. I was going to do the walkthrough and like count the number of times. I'm going to like try to mentally make a note to do that tomorrow. How many times you pass a sign saying, do not photograph. It is against the law in the courthouse on the way like into where you have the hearing. I'm going to count it. But Alice just didn't know. She didn't know about the order. She only took it because of the online troll that was saying terrible things about her and her children. Look at what the online troll made me do. It's not my fault. It's that troll's fault. Don't you see, Judge? I can't be held responsible for my own conduct because of the troll. But she said it wasn't her intent to violate the rule and that she felt stupid. Now, we're not going to argue. She's not going to argue that Alice didn't post on social media after the order was made. That's good, because there is abundant evidence that she in fact did so. But look at the change. Look at the change in what she posted. All of the direct communications, they've all stopped. She's not communicating directly because there's an order. Because there's an order. What would happen if there wasn't one? That's the question, isn't it? He claims that Alice had sent hundreds of communications, but there's no evidence of any direct communication since November of 2023. And during that time, Ioan wasn't paying monthly support because he'd paid her $110,000 from the proceeds of the sale of the home, his proceeds that he was entitled to use as her living expenses. That's why he wasn't paying her monthly. Nevertheless, that's what she was communicating, asking him to help with expenses for the children and to provide the health insurance as he's required. She's totally justified, Judge. Don't you see? Don't you see how great her excuse is for this? That's the only reason that she literally has to acknowledge violating the explicit terms of the order. He had a really good reason. He claims Alice sent a message regarding the paparazzi will be around, look out for it. But he reports it in his declaration and it has an ellipsis. And the ellipsis is really important because in it, the omitted language says, I have never called them like you have. I just know they're going to be there. Oh, that's credible. That doesn't sound projecty at all. That doesn't sound like an implied threat at all. I just know they're going to be there. I just know. I don't know how this woman thinks that Alice is credible at all. More changes. Alice has completely deactivated her X account. She's taken down posts on Instagram. Ioan and Bianca have blocked her. Bianca says she hasn't even been to Tattle since 2022. And Alice is trying to take the Tattle website down so that her record of her abusive texts won't be available online anymore. Trying to take Tattle down as remediation. Also, a difference in the messages from pre-DVRO to the later posts is that some of the later posts are protected speech under the DVRO because they just state what's going on in the case. So she goes through a number of these posts, and I sure wish I knew which ones she was talking about. One where it's just a discussion of the house being sold and that she hadn't filed any pleadings yet because Ioan had filed him, and people are interested in the case. They follow the case. And so they had seen Ioan's pleadings and she's just explaining what's happening. And then one that deals with 2024 violations. Some of those are protected speech. One, there's the one that involves the statement about how you can get a restraining order for mean tweets, but for actual violence, you can't get one. That's just a general comment about the family law system. It's not directed at anybody. Another one is just what is happening. It's a general comment about the family law system. And by the way, she doesn't mention Ioan or Bianca in any of these. The fucking Amber Heard defense makes its appearance. Well, I never said his name. Fucking implication is the thing, honey. Everybody knows who you're talking about. You don't have to say their name. The context can make it perfectly clear. But she doesn't even mention them. And then others that she made, they're just about information that could be gleaned from the public record. If you were, already going through the court files and interpreting them the way that you imagine Alice sees the situation, it'd just be that. One that reflected doubts about her husband having cheated. The one that was the response to somebody else's post. Well, Alice testified he did cheat on her earlier in the marriage. And this is just her opinion that violating the oaths say something about somebody's character. It's just a general opinion. Gotta correct this fact because they were not married in 2023 when she said this happened. This is actually 4 years before he married her. So that's not a good explanation. This has nothing to do with 2023 because Ioan hadn't made any oaths at that time. So I'm afraid that explanation is gonna fall a little flat in light of actual reality. Doesn't add up. One where she just says she has an order in place, one where she talks about what she's been through and what her mom had went through. And Alice's conduct has changed quite a bit in her recent posts compared to previous stuff. Now we move on to the third factor, the burden of the DVRO on Alice, because we have to address this because there's no risk of physical abuse. Wish we'd gotten that stalking in. The judge at this point is like, it's 4:15. Janina has now gone on for about 45 minutes, quite a bit longer than she said her argument was going to take. And the judge says, how much longer, but not pressure, not pressuring you, but it's time. So never mind, don't rush. We're just going to resume this at 8:30 tomorrow. Bye, everybody. He's like noping the hell out of court at this point. So Janina still has the third factor that she wants to talk about, the burden to Alice. How burdened, what a victim Alice is by this order, because frankly, this abusive argument would be complete without the DVRO. We really must have the DVRO. You see, the Alice is the victim of all of this. But we have to wait until tomorrow to get that part. So that's what's going to happen next. Joe will have an opportunity to make a rebuttal argument. There's no time limit on that or anything. As I said before, the judge said, you're going to make your arguments and then I'm going to rule. So I don't know if we are going to get it immediately after the conclusion of the arguments tomorrow. If we're going to get it, after lunch or something like that. Don't know, but I tend to think we're going to get it immediately, just because if he was prepared to do it immediately today, why wouldn't he be prepared to do it immediately tomorrow? So that's where I think we're at. Now, we do, as I said, still have witnesses to go through on the argument for termination of spousal support. We know of Bianca, we know of Ioan, we know of Alice, and we know of Alice's other witness. If Alice still intends to call that other witness, who knows? I mean, who knows? Who knows who this person even is? Alice said she wanted to call Detective Morales. After Detective Morales's testimony today, I don't think I believe that. I think this was perhaps a little bit more of a head fake. I'm going to call him. You better not call. You don't know what he's going to say. I kind of think they do know what he was going to say. Because that just didn't play. That just didn't play the way I think she wanted them to think it was going to. But we are running short on time. It is just a half day tomorrow in the morning. I am still going to do the live stream in the evening as usual. It's just easier for me to have the kind of consistent time and stuff like that. Still haven't heard back on my request to view and or copy the exhibits, which is unfortunate. Tomorrow would be a great opportunity to do that, but haven't got a ruling on it yet. I kind of, at this point, am suspecting it's going to sit on the judge's desk until at least this part of the presentation of the evidence is over. But we'll see. We'll see. I would, my inclination would be to give it like a week after this week. And if I haven't heard anything, send a nice follow-up letter, something like that. But we'll just see. We'll just see how that goes. So, man, this really is, I said it's kind of getting close to the end game, and it's largely this closing argument that has made that impression on me. I mean, certainly just more of the evidence kind of coming together and so forth. The whole I mean, Lynn, I think, was very important just in terms of the big picture. This is exactly what she said she was going to do. She did, in fact, do it. It's something that Lynn regrets now, but just that this was not an accident. This was something that was planned and coordinated. Oh, it looks like my internet is starting to get glitchy, so hopefully I think the timing is going to work out well on this particular stream. But really, it was this closing argument because she said from the outset, her explanations involved using this process to abuse him, to bleed him dry, to air his private business, to prevent him from being able to move on with his life. And this closing argument, that's just a reperpetration of so much of what he suffered and what abuse victims fear suffering, being told that they're liars, being not believed, being minimized, being mocked. All of these things are happening in her closing. And so I suppose in some respects it is quite a fitting conclusion to Alice's case, because that really does seem to be her end game. This is her last opportunity to abuse him. So she's going to take it, get it done. Let's see what you guys have had to say. We have a super sticker from Rosalind Byrne. Thank you so much for that, Rosalind. And then Duncan Idaho 44. If she's going to claim she was hacked or that someone is creating fake accounts, she'll need to enlist the expert advice of Robert Devine. Get him in here. Does Robert Devine, does he know anything about hacking just a single account, or do you have to have every single means of communication that you possess be hacked for him to be helpful? Not entirely clear on that. Yeah, almost like we've never heard this before, right? Almost like this isn't going to be a routine expected excuse that people are going to make in situations where they're caught red-handed with their IP address and their phone number and so forth linked to their attempted surreptitious continuation of their abuse campaign. So tomorrow's Wednesday, hump day, getting ever closer to the end. I am very hopeful of a ruling. I will announce it as soon as I can, as soon as we know, as soon as we have a break in the court proceedings where I can tweet and not be violating the decorum of the court. That does seem quite important. I had a funny little encounter with the bailiff. It's been the same lady bailiff for most of this hearing. And so when I was leaving today, she was leaving at the same time, and so she just asked me, do you go to court every day and just watch trials? And I said, well, I honestly prefer when the trials are live streamed and then I can just watch them at home with my dog. But yes, watching trials is what I do. And I just told her how, after spending 20 years as a lawyer, being on this side of the trial process is kind of fun. I don't have to have the stress of the prep and the responsibility of managing the clients and all of that type of thing. I just get to sit back and enjoy the chaos that unfolds. And she kind of laughed at that. And so anyway, we're getting to be known around the area, as often happens, once you become a familiar face. So hopefully we'll get a ruling tomorrow. I will keep you guys posted. Otherwise, we will be continuing with the case on the request to terminate spousal support. I'm very curious to see where else they intend to go to establish this, because it just does seem like there is a lot they haven't gone into, just based on, you know, the kinds of things that came up in the pretrial pleadings and stuff. So hopefully we get a little bit more of that, but I will be there to report it back. Want to thank all of you again for joining me tonight. Thank you again to the mods. Thank you for all of the awesome comments, and thank you for your interest in this issue and for caring. Thank you for caring about men that are victimized by abusive women. I feel like we are hopefully finally kind of reaching this turning point where people are starting to take that seriously. They're starting to recognize it's an actual thing, that domestic violence is not merely something that men perpetrate against women because they're just bad, and that in fact women perpetrate domestic violence at approximately equal rates as men do. It is not a gender problem. It is a character problem. So I just appreciate the consideration of that, and being willing to show the concern for a man, because it's just very easy, and I think very common for people to just kind of brush it off. It's like, oh, it's not a big deal, not take it seriously. But it is in fact very seriously, very harmful, very damaging, as this case is tending to show. So more tomorrow. I will make the mental note about counting the signs for the photography. Hopefully I won't forget again, and report that back tomorrow. And as well as anything else interesting that comes up, and of course all of the day-to-day happenings at the trial. Likely to be a short one because of our short day, but we'll just see what it brings. So guys, thank you all again. Please have a wonderful evening. I will see you all tomorrow.